Like, this is called the Pesky Report. Like,
welcome back to the Pesky Report. This is episode 593 of the Pesky Report, brought to you by Beyond the Monster. My name is Derek, and I'm here with Hunter for another minor league episode. As always, this episode is also brought to you by TJ Stats. Here on the Minor League Show, brought to you by TJ Stats. Advanced MLB stats and tools, including pitcher summaries, prospect rankings, and live pitch data. Head on over to tjstats.ca and use code PESKY, P-E-S-K-Y, for 25% off your first month. That is code PESKY at tjstats.ca. So, Hunter, I think coming into today, we were probably going to lead with something else on this episode, but I feel like we have the first, I guess you say big promotion in some ways outside of like Andy Azekar, but like when the first big promotion of what might be the start of promotion season in the system. And that is Franklin Primera moving up from the FCL to Salem. Obviously, when I say promotion season, I mean it's, June 29th as of right now, as we're recording. This episode will be out on June 30th. It's almost July. That's when promotion season really kind of hits, it feels. This feels like it's kind of kicking it off right in a way. And not that there's a move that's happening because of Primera or something else is going to come because of it. But I think we should just kind of notice on Primera, he's a catcher coming from the FCL. I want to read some of his accolades so far. He was a 2025. He was in the Dominican Summer League in 2025. He hit .333, 465 on base, 430 slug, 895 OPS. He was a Summer League All-Star, Dominican Summer League All-Star last year. He was the Dominican Summer League All-Star Game MVP. He also this year got a Complex League Player of the Week earlier this month. He also was back-to-back Sox Prospects Player of the Week for the first 2 weeks of June. And so far this year, he's been stellar in the Complex League. 32 games. He has 8 homers already and 6 doubles. He's hitting .427 with a .549 on base and a .718 slug for a 1267 OPS. And he's up to 13th, I think it is, on the Sox Prospects rankings. And when you put up numbers like that at any level, a promotion's going to come. We're not going to sit here and be like, oh, Primera's going to put up those same numbers in Salem. That'd be extremely unrealistic. But this is someone who I think as of right now, and we'll get into him in a little bit in a second, Hunter, but I think as of right now, in the grand scheme of things, he signed for just $10,000 on September 30th of 2024. And in not even 2 full seasons is, depending on who you ask, a top 15 prospect in the Red Sox system. And honestly, you could even make the argument he's pushing towards the top 10, with obviously the Complex League not holding as big of a weight as some of the other levels in the minor leagues. But the numbers he's had there are absurd. And also coming from the catcher's position. And you also, he's listed at 6 foot 230. It's a very interesting thing to see, because this is kind of one of those things that you see where guys can kind of come into the system. Maybe they're underlooked as a young kid internationally. They come into the system and they just kind of fly. And I'll make the comp a little bit in that sense. Like, you look at Sadon when he came in the system, signed for $10,000, and then eventually becomes a top 100 prospect, gets to the big leagues quick because of his defense. And obviously the bat developed too over the time in the minor leagues. But if you would have told someone when the Red Sox signed Sadon for $10K that he was going to become what we know him as today, I don't think they would have said no chance potentially, or maybe not no chance, but very unlikely. Primera feels like one of those guys that already, $10,000 and he's already turned into potentially one of your top 10 prospects. If you're the Red Sox, obviously, you're extremely happy about it. But I think it also speaks to the nature of player development at such a young age as well. Hunter, what are your thoughts on, obviously, one, just the Primera promotion, and two, him as a player, considering, we haven't seen him in affiliated ball yet, but I'd assume once he does get into affiliated ball, he's going to show up on your prospect rankings.
Yeah, I put this out earlier. I was gonna put like new updated rankings on July 1st, but now I feel like I have to be a nerd and wait for, like maybe do like mid-July rankings, because now I want to give him like a good.
Well, if he plays on June 30th,
but like give him like a good like 10-day sample, and then I won't feel bad if I'm putting him in my top 10 immediately. Off a 10-game sample at least feels good enough. But yeah, he's been absurd. People have been begging for a Franklin Primera promotion for a little bit. It's maybe been a product of something that we've talked about a couple times on here, where the Red Sox maybe overcorrected a little bit and added too many catchers this offseason, to the point where, Raúl Martinez, who's somebody that they added this offseason, was on the dev list for a while in Double-A. He's barely played. Adonis Guzman was in High A, and then he got sent down to Single-A, just because, again, they had too many bodies. The Single-A roster at the moment has 4 catchers. Frederick Jimenez is basically just a first baseman, but like it's Adonis Guzman, it's Andrew Musette, it's Frederick Jimenez, and it's Cliver Salazar. I think I think all of them actually technically can play first base. I was going to say I think Guzman's the only one that is strictly a catcher, but I think he also plays first base. So I think all of them can play first base, and Primera can also play first base. He's a phenomenal defensive catcher, so that's going to be his main position. But it's so I'm sure that was part of it, and it was kind of just like, hey, we want him to get regular at bats. Now Brian Abraham had recently done an interview with Section 10, and he talked about how there were things that they still wanted him to work on. And again, part of it, I'm sure, was, hey, you will get regular at-bats in the FCL, you will get regular reps in the FCL, so let's keep you there. So I'm assuming that was kind of the holdup, was he's going to play every single day here, let's keep him here. But it's just been phenomenal. He has 22 walks to 13 strikeouts. Like there's literally, it really felt like there was nothing for him there. The one thing I want people to remember, he's 19. It's the FCL. He is a different tier of prospect, and I don't want to keep pooping on him, because I feel like I've maybe not been the kindest to him. Not that I've like crapped on him too much or anything. I think Luis Andujar is a very intriguing prospect. I think he's going to be very good. And I think it's important to remember that he is very young. I think is he 18? Yeah, Luis Andujar is only 18 years old. But like, he's someone that was hitting over 400 in the FCL this year, and people were very excited, and his stock rose immensely, and he has come over to Single-A, and in 22 games, he's hitting 122 with 2 doubles. He has 6 walks compared to 29 strikeouts. Like, it's been a very rough ride for Luis Andujar. Like, he's not hitting the ball hard. He's striking out a ton. And it's like, I'm not worried. I don't think this is all of a sudden, it's just like, oh, his career's over at 18. But it's just like, this is a massive jump. Like, I don't think people tend to realize how big of a jump FCL to Single-A baseball is.
Especially mid-season.
So I just, the hype for Franklin Primera is about as big as I've seen the hype for an FCL prospect. Like, this ranks up there with like Miguel Bleis and Justin Gonzalez type hype that I've seen for, and like Yoel and Cespedes. His hype was higher than Franklin Arias was at the time. So like that's kind of where the hype is for him right now. So I don't want him to come over and, 3 weeks into his career, he's hitting 203 with no homers because it's Salem. So the power might not be there. And for people to just all of a sudden, especially with the Red Sox season not going great, obviously they just swept the Yankees. Hopefully that turns things around, but who knows? And I just don't want it to be you know, Red Sox fans to be like, oh, well, it's a bust. Things are going south. So, you know, it might take time. He could also come over and immediately start hitting the piss out of baseballs. Who knows? But it's going to be fun. Franklin Primera is a phenomenal defensive catcher. So he's always going to have that in his bag. He's going to draw walks. He doesn't strike out a ton. There's legitimate power potential in his bat. So there's things that will translate no matter what, and it's the defense, and it's the ability to draw walks, and it's the ability to put the bat on the ball. So there are things that are going to translate, even when other things maybe take a little bit of time. So even if there is an adjustment period, we're going to see things that are working for him. But yeah, this is exciting news. I've said it a couple times. Salem's offense has been bad, and the Red Sox organization doesn't care. Like, they don't care that the single A team's offense is struggling. That's not an issue for them. They care about player development. But for my watching pleasure, I'm very excited for them to add a legitimate bat to the offense. So this is very exciting.
It's really interesting just with Primera, the entire, like, I guess you could look at like his, like, the fact that he signed as a 17-year-old, right? And you know, typically you guys will sign at 16 as an international amateur free agent. He signed at 17. Like I said, it was only 10,000. It makes you wonder, like, okay, how is this the guy that got overlooked in some ways, right? Because of the fact he is a good defensive catcher. Or at the very least, that's what kind of everything says between scouting reports or what's been kind of heard on Primera. It's not like we've seen him play in person or anything. So Hunter and I can't give you like we saw him play and da-da-da-da, right? But based on everything that's been said, heard by us, etc., the defensive profiles there, Sox prospects literally lists him as a young catching prospect with considerable defensive upside. And they put his fielding as a strong defensive profile. So, like, yeah, the defense is there. And now feels like the bat's kind of really coming around. It is interesting, though, just like on that thing, like signed at 17, only 10,000. Just like, how does a guy like this fall through the grapevine? But it does happen occasionally. And I think if you're the Red Sox, you know, kind of international, like, amateur scouting department, you're probably giving yourselves a pat on the back right now. He doesn't even have a listed signing scout as well. Like, that's the funny thing. Like, it's out, like, but like, this is also too some of like the fun things that come out of the minor leagues, right? You're not going to see something like this in the big leagues where a guy just kind of like just pops up almost in some ways almost out of nowhere, right? I mean, heading into last year, like heading into 2025, was anyone even discussing, Franklin Primera? Probably not, right? And after what he did last year, and albeit even in the DSL, it's like, okay, this guy is interesting, but it's in the DSL, right? Now he comes over stateside, puts up the obscene numbers that he put up in the FCL. Let's just be completely honest. Even though it is the FCL, those numbers are crazy. And now he's getting the call up to Salem, and we're not even in July. And also, we haven't even mentioned the best part about Franklin Primera. His birthday's on the same day as my birthday. A few years later, but you know what? Hey, we got one. We got one in the system that I share a birthday with now. So does that have to make him now my second favorite prospect? I don't know. We'll see. But still not passing Alan Castro. I'm sorry. Just not happening. Not happening. But this is just one of those ones that kind of, I feel like if Primera comes out to be like, if Primera ends up in the big leagues and becomes a successful big leaguer, you're going to have one of those like ESPN games where they're like, oh yeah, Franklin Primera, not, wasn't even signed until he was 17 years old, and all this backstory and whatnot, how ESPN typically does, because, it's ESPN, and they'll have like Buster Olney going into like his backstory or something. It feels like that's that, like, it feels, like I said, guys who get signed at 17 for only $10,000 typically don't pan out, right? They typically are just depth signings, or we need a couple guys in the DSL, so we're going to sign them, and who knows what happens. But I'm not saying that was the case with Primera necessarily, but just like if you just look at the fact, like I said, 17-year-old signee, only $10,000. He doesn't even have a listed signing scout. Like, I think that more so, I think you could argue this has already been a success for the Red Sox, and it feels like the sky's the limit for him, in all honesty. Worst case scenario, the defense will carry him as a catcher. Worst case. And if the bat develops, like, you're looking at a guy who, at the catcher position, with the premium that defense is and him being good behind the plate, now you add a bat, like, you're legitimately looking at a good prospect. I feel like it takes less for a catcher to be a good prospect on the basis of they don't need to be able to run fast, right? Hell, they don't even need to be a great contact hitter or a great power hitter. You need one of the two, but you don't necessarily need both, right? Because if you're good defensively, can throw guys out, and hey, I either am a really good contact hitter or I can hit for power, you're going to be seen as a good prospect, right? And at a position where the Red Sox really, like, who's the last good catching prospect that the Red Sox have had? It's been a while. It feels like this, like Primera is, like I said, like the upside is there, right? I will add, I know you did mention Hunter and the walks, the strikeouts. It is interesting. So 22 walks and 13 strikeouts. His Sox prospect page, though, does have him listed as his hit tool part. The last parts of it says likes to attack early in the count, does not see many pitches, still in the early stages of developing an approach, which kind of contradicts the walks to strikeouts in some ways. I mean, it doesn't contradict the fact that he hasn't struck out a ton, because if you're swinging early and you have good bat to ball skills, all odds are you're going to be putting the ball in play early in the count. But the walks do kind of contradict that a little bit. Not saying that, like, as even Sox prospects, they literally have a note that says a full scouting report will be available once they've seen him in game, like in person, right? So in some ways, they're probably also going through like what they hear through the grapevine as well. But it is interesting because when you do move up to Salem mid-season, it is a massive jump. It's not like at the end of the FCL season where the guys who started the year in low A are now in high A.
Yeah.
Now everyone's team is bumping some people up from the FCL, right? It very much feels like this is the time where that jump is going to be biggest, because those guys who started the year in A ball are still going to be there. Now you're bumping up from rookie ball, where you might have a couple older guys, but it's a lot of guys either high school draftees from last year or, coming over from the DSL in a similar sense, right? It is a big competition jump. So it'll be interesting if he struggles. It's not like a panic, like you mentioned, it's not a panic, but it is very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see kind of how he does, and actually to actually just get eyes on him, I guess, is the other thing. And like you mentioned, Hunter, having a little bit of a bump to that Salem offense definitely helps for the viewing pleasure of the Salem Ridgeax games, because they have struggled a little bit. However, though, speaking of Salem's offense, it is funny. This past week, their OPS leader this past week, none other than Andrew Mussett. So kind of funny. Catcher leads the team in OPS this past weekend. Nope, we're gonna bring up another catcher. Mussett obviously went 5 for 10 with the homer, and he also walked once and didn't strike out. I just find that like a funny little kind of. Yeah, I find that a little funny considering the struggles Salem's offense has had. They call up Franklin Primera the week after one of their catchers has, the best week out of anyone on the team. I would assume Primera's going to get the catching reps. They have how many catchers on the team?
Four.
4, technically.
Again, I don't really think Fred Jimenez.
Yeah, but technically though.
Yeah.
Technically,
and also absolutely zero disrespect to him. He's hitting, I think, like 112 on the year. I don't think they're going to prioritize Fred Jimenez playing much the rest of the way.
Yeah, which
he's not playing much at the time anyway. Like he
Yeah.
played, he appeared in 2 games this week. So
Yeah, it happens. Like these are the type of things too that do happen in the minor leagues too. But like it is just kind of funny, like you said. It's a little bit feels like maybe they overcorrected the catcher spot. But even
Yeah.
then, right? I mean, if there's ever a position to have too much depth in some ways, just because I feel like catchers too, like especially in the minor leagues, you don't necessarily want guys catching every day, right? Not only for the fact that, it's like I feel like catcher's probably one of the bigger wear and tear positions, I feel like. Um, like, you know, especially too, like everyone thinks of catchers as like there's like a certain like catcher build, right? It's a little bit like bigger, kind of I guess stockier, but not fat or anything, but like a little bit bigger, a little bit more meat on the bones, right? Like for example, Connor Wong doesn't fit your catcher build, your typical catcher build, right? And because everyone, the old school thinking is, oh, a catcher, there's a lot of wear on your knees and this and that and whatever, and you know, so having a lot of catchers isn't necessarily like the worst thing in the world. It allows you to rotate guys in and out. Um, but also the other side of the things that you miss with the things that with having a lot of catchers is the pitching staff, right? A pitcher might be working with, in 4 consecutive starts might have 4 different catchers, right? If Primera is doing the majority of the catching, right? Maybe now some of the pitchers in Salem are going to, have a more familiar face behind the plate potentially. I'm not that they can't pitch with the changing catchers, right? Because they've been with those guys pretty much the entire year. But I do also wonder how that is like an effect too, just on Salem in general with Primera, because odds are he's going to be doing a lot of catching, right? You wouldn't want to move him off of catcher. Catcher's a premium position. It's why, as a prospect, if you have a really good catching prospect, you don't want to move them. Blake Swihart. You typically don't want to move him off catcher because it's such a premier position, and especially one that's already good defensively, right? But to Salem, there were a few good weeks. I will just mention off the top, 3 homers. Musa obviously was one. Adonis Guzman, funnily enough, another one. And then Skylar King had the 3rd homer of the week for Salem. Hunter, I'll hand it off to you. Whose week really kind of stood out to you for Salem this week on the hitting side of things?
Yeah, didn't stand out, but I do just want to give a shout out to Starlin Nunez, who played in his first game since June 13th. He was dealing with an injury and hit a walk-off single. And then it had to be Skylar King for me. 8 for 20, 2 doubles, a homer, drove in 4 runs, stole 4 bases. Just an awesome week for him. He's really struggled to find consistency this year, but he's still been one of their better bats. He's only hitting, I think, 217 on the year. Hold on, let me get the number in front of me. Yeah, 217, 312, 364. But he's got 8 doubles, he's got 8 homers, he's driven in 27 runs, he's stolen 24 bases, which is one of the better numbers on the team. Andrew Zapata has, I believe, 33 steals on the year, which leads the team. It's 2nd in the organization. Braden Ward has 35, I think, 35 or 34 in AAA. But Skylar King's been one of the better bats. Again, I know 217 with 8 homers doesn't sound all that enthralling, but again, Salem's offense has not exactly been otherworldly. And this was just one of his better weeks. So yeah, that was really good to see. Andrew Zapata was another one who was really good, 5 for 18. He drew 3 walks, he stole 4 bases. And then someone who didn't exactly have a good week, but still interesting, was Justin Berry. He went 1 for 14, but he did draw 5 walks, so it was good to see him get on base. And then again, Andrew Musette, 5 for 10, a homer, and then 1 walk and no strikeouts. He's been so good. He hasn't played much this year. He started the year in high A, but he was on the injured list. And when he finally did come back, they sent him to single A. And he's been like struggling for playing time. Like he's not playing every day. Again, kind of just a casualty to the amount of catcher / first baseman they have. Like, because he plays catcher and first base, but they have, the 4 quote unquote catchers, and then they have between him, Fred Jimenez, and D'Angelo Ortiz all playing first base. And I think like even Ian Fernandez can play first base. If I think Ian Fernandez can play first base. I might be making that up. But like they have a lot of people that can play first base too. It's just it's this big cluster of, we have a lot of people playing the same positions. So like he played 3 games this week and he hit 500. But he's just consistently been hitting for them, and that was his first homer of the year. So it's cool to see him continue to be phenomenal for them. He has more strikeouts, or I'm sorry, he has more walks than strikeouts this year. He has 17 walks and 15 strikeouts. He's hitting .318 with a .471 on base percentage this year. So hasn't had a ton of playing time, but he's been phenomenal with it. He's very, very, very far from being like considered some like big prospect in the system. And I don't think he ever will be, just because he is at a position in the system. Like he's a catcher / first baseman. And I would guess that he is probably like ranked in their system. Like if they have internal system rankings, my guess is they probably have him at like 12th in the system in catcher rankings, if like at best, just based on the way they've treated him. Like it does not seem like they have any interest in like pushing him as like this big catcher. Like again, they started him in high A this season, and then before even playing a game, he was in single A, and now he's in single A, and they're prioritizing Clyber Salazar over him. They're prioritizing Adonis Guzman over him. They're clearly going to prioritize Franklin Primera over him. And I'm not arguing that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like obviously Franklin Primera should be prioritized over many people. But it's just, he's doing the best with what he's given. And I hope they continue to try to give him time, because even though he is not like the top prospect in the system, he has been so phenomenal with the time he has been given. So, even when you're not best prospect, if you're putting up those kind of numbers, you should continue to be given time.
Yeah, it is definitely the catcher position is kind of, it's such a weird one for the Red Sox because of, with catchers, like, yeah, you could probably play him at first base, but like outside of that, where are you going to put him, right? And even if you could argue, oh, well, this guy might be able to play left field, or this guy might be able to play third base, right? One, you're taking playing time away from other people, but now also two, now they've got to it's not just because they might be able to play left field or might be able to play third base because, all the other catchers only may be able to catch and play first base. Now you got to figure out, one, if they could even play that position, and two, one, can they play the position? Two, is it worth it for them to play that position? And then three, are they going to be good enough in that position to warrant putting them in that position in a game? Because, quote unquote, being able to play it and actually playing the position are two different things, right? Like, I guess might be a horrid example, but like Brian Reynolds could play center field for the Pirates. They'd be stupid to put him there, though. I mean, there's a reason he hasn't played center field in a couple of years now, right? It's like when the Cincinnati, or this is might even a better one. It's when the Cincinnati Reds try to put Eugenio Suarez at shortstop. Just because he can play there doesn't mean he should play there. It doesn't mean he's going to be good there, right? Like, that's probably the best example, actually. Just because Eugenio Suarez can, I put "can" in air quotes if you're just listening to this. Just because you can play shortstop doesn't mean you should, right? Just because this catcher could play another position doesn't mean they should be put there, right? So that kind of becomes the issue with the catcher logjam, because like we'll get even to like AA down the road and some guys in AA, but like when I kind of think of like catchers, like you look at like a Brooks Brandon who really has been just moved to first base, right? And if you're a catcher, it's either catcher or first base, right? And that's it. Um, and like there's nothing against Brooks Brandon and his ability catching or anything, but when you kind of move a guy off catcher, there's only one place you can put him, and the Red Sox don't have a ton of first basemen in the system, so it does help a little bit with their catcher kind of overflow, I guess you could call it. But at some point too, though, you start moving all your catchers to first base. Now you're not going to have you can't move anyone else to first base because you're going to have too many first basemen, right? And like you mentioned, a little bit similar here in Salem now, where Primera is going to be doing a lot of the catching. You got to find these other guys playing time. You do have a DH spot. You do have first base, but you only play 6 games a week, and now you might have, outside of 1 or 2 games a week, you got to fit potentially 4 guys in, because even like someone like Frederick Jimenez, right? He's only playing 2 games a week right now. He's still probably going to play 1 or 2 games every week, right? So when you kind of consider that, yeah, he might not catch, but you still might put him in the DH spot a game, or you might play him at first for a game, right? And now you're going to get Musset. Musset played 3 games this week. So where's he going to play in his 3 games? Guzman played 5 games. Salazar played 5 games. Recently, it feels like Salem, they've been catching Musset for, I think this past week, Musset catch 1 game, and then the other 5 was split between Guzman and Salazar. Well, Primera's catching 4 or 5. How are you going to get these guys time behind the plate? Maybe Primera catches 4, and Guzman and Salazar each get 1, right? Maybe Primera DHs a day as well, so catches 4, DHs 1, right? But how are you going to figure that out? I'm sure the Red Sox will have it figured out, right? But it is interesting, maybe whose playing time gets cut, who doesn't, who gets priority at first base over someone else, right? I think that's kind of more so the interesting kind of trickle down effects.
Yeah.
With that.
And I don't know how much the lower levels do like the play the hot hand thing. I know they do it a little bit, like the tiniest bit, but I also know it's a lot of, the top prospects are going to play. Like there's a little bit of play the hot hand, maybe when it comes to like the, this at this position, neither of these guys are that big of a deal. But like if in high A, if Justin Gonzalez is cold, you're not just going to, not play him for 3 days because his backup's playing good. It's like, all right, well, it's Justin Gonzalez, so he's going to be in there anyway, But like in Salem at the moment, there's really not a lot of that going on. Like when Franklin Primera is there, he's probably going to play even when he's struggling. Like they'll give him his off days because he's a catcher. So he's going to get, he's going to probably get 1 or 2 off days a week. I would imagine he'll probably catch 4 days, maybe 3. He'll probably catch 3 days, DH 2, and have an off day. That's going to be my guess every week.
Yeah. He's probably either catch 3 DH2 or he'll catch 4 DH1.
Yeah.
That's probably most likely. The other thing I do want to add on to the kind of thing, like in some ways, like the thing with playing the hot hand is hot hand too, like especially in like the low levels of the minor leagues, it's hard to distinguish in some ways because a guy could, like if you're just looking at the base numbers, right? A guy could be quote unquote hot, but yeah, he's hitting 500 over his last 2 weeks, but like the guy's got, a couple bloop singles, a pop up down the third base line that no one got to, and he turned it into a double.
Yeah, he just
but then you might have a guy
trash team. Yeah.
Then you might have a guy who's hitting 250, but he's smoking the ball all over the place. It's just being caught, right?
Yeah.
And that guy's hitting 250 might be your quote unquote hot hand because of the under the hood numbers, and they're like, okay, he's not a top prospect, but the under the hood numbers look really good. So, yeah, he's not going to play over X player, right? But like for example, in the outfield, right, is probably the easiest one you can do. Okay, you're not going to put him in center field, but maybe we'll play him a little bit in left field and right field.
Yeah.
Right. Because in some ways, too, like, yeah, you're going to have guys who break out who maybe are unexpected, right? We've seen it before where guys come into the season. Yastinson Garcia is the perfect example, right? At some point, yeah, you do start to roll with the hot hand because eventually, if it lasts long enough, hot hand isn't a hot hand anymore. guy might be legit, right?
Yeah. I don't think Salem has to worry about that too much though. I'm not gonna name names. I'm just gonna rattle off all the batting averages from this week in order. 500, awesome. 400, awesome. 333, 278, 250, 222, 220. I'm sorry, there was another 250, 222, 222, 188, 125, 143. Sorry, missed that one. 143, 125, 071, 0. It's a lot of bad averages, man. A lot of really bad averages. Like, a lot of really bad averages. A 0, a 71, a 125, a 143, a 188, 200, 222, 222. Like, those are bad. 250 is fine. 250 is fine. 222 is not terrible. It's not good, but the 222 wasn't bad because he walked a lot. But I mean, a lot of bad averages, man. And you're doing that when you're hitting 3 homers on the week total.
Yeah. So Salem this year. So Salem this year has the second lowest OPS in the Carolina League. They have a 690 team OPS this year. They're hitting 225 as a team, which is also second lowest. I will mention the team with the highest OPS in the Carolina League is Fredericksburg with an 810 OPS. Second place is Augusta with 765 OPS. The OPSs are not high in the Carolina League. This might be a beyond Salem thing. This just might be a Carolina thing, actually, come to think of it. But I will also just kind of add to so this weekend as a whole, Salem hit 236 with a 679 OPS. So it shockingly can get worse. Kannapolis hit 201 this week. So it somehow, yeah, with a 558 OPS as well. So it shockingly can get worse. But yeah, the Salem offense definitely, struggling to say the least.
And when you look at their season stats, their best hitter was Andy Azakar. He's gone. Stanley Tucker's gone. Luke Heyman's gone. Like, their best hitters are gone. Andrew Zapata's
yeah,
still there.
in the last month, just forever, the last 30 days, last 30 days, Salem has a 633 OPS and is hitting 217. They have the worst OPS in the Carolina League by about 60 by 6 actually on the dot by 65 points on the OPS, and they're hitting 217 is the lowest batting average. Second only to Kannapolis, who's hitting 2. And it's the lowest, and the second worst is Wilson, who's 228, but they have a 750 team OPS. So
it's single A. A lot of these guys are 18, 19, 20. I'm not trying to crap on them too much. It's like I'm not. It's just the point I'm trying to make is more just like it's not the most exciting baseball you're ever going to watch. So
yeah, and I mean it's one of those things.
It's more just Franklin Primera save us is more what I'm trying to make.
Well, yeah, it's more so for the viewing pleasure of the team.
Yes,
because
if you're going to Salem, don't go expecting to see 15 hits and 5 home runs.
Yes. Yeah. Don't expect that. Now, I mean, on the pitching side, maybe you can expect some better things potentially. Now, this week wasn't like the craziest week or anything. There were a lot of good though. Like, there was a lot of weirdly I guess you could call sort of piggyback-ish. I mean, Jose Bayo had 2 2/3 out of the bullpen. He gave up just the 1 earned run. I know he gave up 2 runs total. One of them was unearned, but it was that Williams Rodriguez in 4 2/3 innings in his 2 appearances out of the bullpen only gave up 1 unearned run, and he struck out 6, walking none. Jacob Mayers had 4 walks and 2 1/3, but only 1 hit, no runs. So outside of the walks, it was it was a good outing. Salem's also weird too, just because. And this is kind of the other thing I wonder, because Salem's such a young level. right? It's so like there's all younger guys there. Part of me does wonder, like, does a struggling offense also like affect the pitching? Because yes, player development is the primary goal, and yeah, like for the players, like their end goal is getting to the big leagues. But winning helps, right? Like we mentioned it back when Greenville won the South Atlantic League championship, right? And we mentioned how yes, the end goal is player development, but winning helps, right? Having, you know, we mentioned it in the past with, the quote unquote, like kind of like original big three of Meyer, Anthony, and Teal, right? And how they progressed together, right? And look at this year, the start of this year, where Witherspoon, Ianson, and Marcus Phillips all started in Greenville. And one of the things that was like they were debating on Marcus Phillips of, do we start him in Greenville? Do we start him in Salem? And they started him in Greenville because of how close him, Ianson, and Witherspoon were, right? And so like, yes, player development is important, but relationships do help, and winning helps those relationships as well, right? Winning helps that development, right? Because odds are if you're winning, you're playing good, right? And one of the things that you do worry about in some ways with guys who are so young, right? With guys who are so young, you have a pitcher out on the mound and he's pitching great, but his offense can't get anything, and it starts to get in his head because over the last 30 days, Salem's been, the worst offense in the Carolina League, right? So now you're looking at, as a pitcher, obviously the pitcher's not going to be like, oh, they're the worst offense in the league, but the pitcher's like, your pitcher might be on the mound, and if it's someone who's younger too, they might be looking like, can I just get one run of support, right? Can I get two? Like, where can I get 3 runs of support, please, right? And that's also too, obviously, I feel like that's something that's more, a player might be more vulnerable to at a level like Salem, just because a lot of guys are so early in their careers. Now the Red Sox do have a lot of pitchers who are like college guys and that, but it still does make you wonder because certain guys, are coming out of, I guess like we've talked about him in the past a little bit, but like a guy like a Brady Tiger, right? Who coming out of Arkansas, pitching in the SEC, you're on an SEC team in general. Your odds are you have a pretty good team behind you, and you're coming from that now to a team, and obviously he's had his injury issues and whatnot. But like comparing that to a team, the Salem team right now that struggled at, offensively, obviously Tiger, he's a little bit more, aged because of like his college years, right? He's not coming into Salem as a 19-year-old. But I do wonder with some of the guys on the Salem team of, that's such a young team, like how are the vibes? Because I do wonder, like, because player development, yes, end goal, end all be all is player development, but and also you also wonder too, just not even just pitchers, but even the hitters, how much is it weighing on them? Are guys pressing, right? You know, everyone sees, everyone knows whether or not if you're a hitter and you're going, maybe you went 0 for 4 your last 5 games, or if you're a pitcher and you know that, oh, maybe I pitched well, but the offense struggling, or maybe I didn't pitch well and didn't give my offense a chance, right? And with guys who are, so young, I do wonder, like, does an extended spell like this kind of get into their heads just because, a lot of them are so early in their career? And because we do mention, like, yes, we want the offense to do good for our viewing pleasure, right? And not that the Red Sox care about it in some ways overall, just because they're more focused on player development than does our team win games, right? But as we mentioned, we talked about it with Liam Carroll in the past, who was the manager in Salem previously. Like, as much as player development does matter, like, you still want to win. These guys still want to win. They're competitors, right? So that's kind of my, I guess, my little spiel about, because I remember, I think it was like the first year of this show, the amount of times I was like, winning's cool, but like, we're here for player development, right? And, yes, we're here for, and I've even would inverse it, like, player development's end all and be all, but winning is still nice, right? But still player development. It feels, this right now though in Salem feels like they need a week where like the offense just goes off. They win 4 or 5 games in a week, and who knows, maybe it shifts things, but it does definitely feel like Salem's getting a little bit dire in some ways. In some ways it feels a little bit dire because you watch a Salem game right now and it feels like, okay, where's the offense coming from today? And we're not 100% sure sometimes, right? And yes, it's for viewing pleasure. We want it, but we want to see guys play well. We want to see an offense that's going to score runs, but you do wonder like the toll it could potentially take on guys. But
yeah,
I think I want to go off track, but pitching side, we're almost at the 45-minute mark, and we're not even through Salem. So pitching side of things, Hunter.
Yeah, Christian Fouch intrigues me because when you watch him, he's gross. But he's had just a severe walk problem this year. 3 innings, three innings, no runs. I just lost this stat line. 3 innings, no runs, no hits, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts this week in his lone start. On the year, 46 strikeouts, 45 walks, and 34 2/3 innings. So like really good strikeout rate, disastrous walk rate, 6.75 ERA, 2.08 batting average against is really good, but obviously the ERA is bad. 2.02 WHIP in 13 games. Again, not good. So like strikeout numbers are great. Batting average against is great. And other numbers are rough looking, and it's like, again, when you watch him on the mound, he passes the eye test. Like you'll see how gross he is, but it's just like sometimes it seems like he just has zero idea where the ball's going. So kind of like the Brandon Clark syndrome of, if you can just reel things in, I think he has a chance to be absolutely disgusting. It's just, can they figure out how to reel things in? And then Williams Rodriguez was really impressive this week, which makes me happy. 4 2/3, no earned runs, the 1 unearned, 6 strikeouts, no walks. And then Lehighton Finley, 4 hits, 2 runs, 5 innings, set a new career high with 10 strikeouts, walked 2. He's got a 3.44 ERA, 2.51 batting average against, 1.45 WHIP in 12 games, 56 strikeouts, 31 walks, and 55 innings. He was I'm going to get this wrong. Yeah, see, I was going to say 7th round pick, and I would have been wrong. 6th round pick last year out of Georgia. He feels like someone who's probably closing in on a promotion soon. I think whenever we get that, like, I think there's going to be at some point like a mass pitching prospect promotion at some point, just like a big wave of like, oh, Blake Wehunt moves up to AAA, and I'm of course now I'm blanking on people who will move up, but like, oh, and then Kyson Witherspoon moves up to AA, and the Lehighton Finley goes up to high A, and maybe Devin Futrell moves up to AA, and like it'll be multiple people moving up to a level. Like Gage Zeal will move up to AAA, and I think we're just going to see big jumps. I don't know when that'll happen. Like maybe it'll be post deadline is when it'll happen. Obviously, if the Red Sox end up selling or buying, I guess whatever happens, I don't know. The Yankee series made things so much more confusing, but. Yeah, I think he's one of those guys who, after the deadline, we're going to see a massive wave of prospects moving up levels, and he's just been very consistent recently. And this was one of his more dominant starts, which was cool to see.
Yeah, the one thing I will want to just kind of jump on Fouch for. It's weird. I have this like weird. So I've always had this thing with like position players where high floor guys intrigue me, just because, especially when like they're high floor guys because of like their defense, or and like if they have like a like you look at like back to like Sadon with his defensive speed. You look like kind of certain guys in the system now, like a Nelly Taylor, where like even if the bat for Nelly Taylor doesn't develop, he's always going to be he'll always be a useful piece in your organization, just because of the speed and defense, right? Because worst case scenario in his career, he's AAA depth, right? Absolutely worst case, I feel like, and because of the speed and defense. Fouch is weird because this is where like pitchers gets weird on like the high floor thing for pitchers, because Fouch is nasty enough where like he might have like a high floor as a reliever, right? But like obviously you'd want him to be a starter, right? Or like way, where you look at Tolley and like I remember like when after he kind of struggled a little bit in the big leagues last year, and there was like, oh, this guy could be a lights out closer, and it's like, if it like, the guy's got a high floor, like the stuff's absurd, right? Like, you look at like Fouch's ones are weird ones, where like as a starter, the floor might not be super high, but like if he doesn't figure out as a starter, like he could have a high floor as a reliever, and that's one of those like it's like pitching is like a weird caveat because you also have guys who maybe are high floor starters, right? Like, oh, this guy could definitely be a back end starter or a long relief type, but like they have a higher ceiling as a starter than a reliever, right? Because if everything goes right, they might be a mid rotation starter, maybe even a number 2 if everything goes right, but maybe they don't have the stuff to crack it in the bullpen, right? As like a closer, for example. So when you come into when you get to like talking about pitchers, the floor versus ceiling conversation is really weird because, and don't get me wrong, yes, you'd rather your guy be a starter than a reliever. There's a reason why middle to back end starters can get paid 15 to 20 million potentially in free agency, but even your best relievers are getting 15 to 20 million. There's a reason why starters are so much more valuable. They also pitch so many more innings. However, does not mean relievers are not valuable, right? You need to have a bullpen, right? And like a guy like Fouch, it feels like, yes, the walks are an issue. Don't get me wrong, they are. How many pitchers in the history of forever have had walk issues? And there are really, really good pitchers in the MLB right now that have walk issues, right? So like a guy like Fouch, to me, it's one of those things where like you keep him as a starter for now, absolutely, right? But he feels like one of those guys where it's like, okay, if the command and control issues stick around long term and maybe starting isn't going to work out, like the bullpen could be almost like a sanctuary for him in some ways, I guess, where it's like, okay, yeah, like maybe he walks too many guys to start, but like let the stuff play in the bullpen, right? Because as you mentioned, Hunter, he does like when you like see him on the mound, he looks nasty. He looks disgusting. It's just sometimes you don't know where the ball is going to end up with him, right? You mentioned the I'm already drawing a blank. This is bad.
Brandon Clark.
Crap, I forgot who you mentioned already.
Brandon Clark.
Yes, Brandon Clark. Like Brandon Clark, right? You look at him, if he stays healthy, right? He stays healthy and continues to, when he's now with the Cardinals, right? He stays healthy. Like he's a guy where like maybe he's a starter, maybe he's a reliever, but like you could definitely see him in the big leagues because of how the stuff plays, right? I think there is something to that, right, with a pitcher where, you want them to be a starter, but if they're not, like, they could still be valuable somewhere else. And like you even look at like starters right now, like Trey Savage is someone who has been like looked at as a really good, really, really, really good, pitching prospect. And he's got a 12% walk rate in the big leagues. He's not immune to walks by any means. He's having a decent year. I mean, 3.56 ERA, 3.79 FIP. It's not outlandish. You also got to remember it's his first full season in the big leagues too, right? I mean, Dylan Cease has a 12% walk rate, and look at the track record that Dylan Cease has built for himself, right? And Dylan Cease is having a very good year this year, right, with the Blue Jays. So in that sense, I think like with a guy like Fouch, obviously it's very early. He's in Salem. But guys, even any guy who struggles with walks, I think, you look at it and you go, okay, like Marcus Phillips is another guy, I think, where you look at him and you're like, okay, the command might be an issue, but like we saw him in college as a reliever. We saw how good he can be out of the bullpen in the past. Yes, you're going to want to try him as a starter, but if it doesn't work, the bullpen can be a good fallback option for guys like that, right? Does it mean you want them to end up in the bullpen? No, obviously. Starters are more valuable. But that's where like the thing with pitchers where it's hard, like I do tend to like guys with high floors. Doesn't mean that it doesn't mean they can't have a high ceiling. Let me just throw that out there too. Having a high floor doesn't mean you have a low ceiling. But also too, like pitchers, the floor thing is a little bit more complicated than a position player, right? Because Christian Fouch, like Garrett Whitlock, for example, is another good example, right? You look at Garrett Whitlock now, he's a really good setup man. They tried him as a starter, and there were a couple of moments there where it looked like he might be a legitimate mid-rotation arm if everything were to potentially work out. It didn't work out, right? You throw him back in the bullpen, now he's your setup guy, right? And he's still worth that extension you gave him, right? Yes, it would have been more valuable if he was a starter, but the worst case scenario for Garrett Whitlock, he's your setup guy, right? That's more of like an extreme. I'm not saying anyone in the system is going to become just like that, but that's like an example of like the whole floor thing for pitchers being different because there are some Jake Bennett, for example. I love Jake Bennett, right? His floor is going to be as a starter. He doesn't really have that same floor in the bullpen, right? And it's because of the type of pitcher he is. It's a lefty, not super hard throwing, mixes his pitches really well though. Those guys, he's going to have a higher floor as a starter than as a reliever, right? Because as a reliever, he's probably more of like a, long relief swingman type. Maybe he gets into that middle relief mix, but he's not going to be a back end bullpen guy. As a starter, though, Jake Bennett could potentially be a good middle of the rotation guy, right? In worst case scenario, he's a back end starter, right? Which there's so much there, and there's a lot of value in that too, both ways, right? But a guy like Fouch intrigues me just because if it doesn't work out as a starter, the stuff is intriguing enough where you could go, yeah, this might work in the bullpen. It's the Wilcom and Gonzalez conundrum, I guess you could put in some ways. Back when he was in the system, it's like the guy's nasty, but you don't know if he's going to be a starter or reliever long term because of the command and the control. Right. But I mean, look at Gonzalez. I mean, he's made it to the big leagues. Right. So clearly there's talent, right? It's that whole like conundrum. But yeah, that's my piece on the Salem pitching and Fouch. Anything else, Hunter, we want to touch on, or are we going to move on? Nope. All right, we are good to move then. We're going to bump up to Greenville. And Greenville, actually, I don't know when the last time this has happened, but Greenville had both players of the week this week in the South Atlantic League. They had do they call it position player of the week, or do they call it hitter of the week?
Hitter of the week, and I'm so ready to talk my shit, it's not even funny. I'm so ready to talk my shit, it's not even funny.
Well, I'll let you go, Hunter. I'll start. First, we had a funny moment this week. Hunter started an Antonio Anderson tweet just with AA in all caps. And whenever Hunter does this, it always catches me off guard. He immediately sends it with AA, and I'm like, what is it about Portland? Or it's something going on in Portland. And it's not like I'm being like, oh no, it's an Antonio Anderson tweet. Like, it's not like it's a bad thing, but it catches me off guard every single time Hunter does it because it's AA something. And I go, I'm like, what's going on in Portland? And I'm like, wait, why isn't it not a Portland clip? And then I'm like, oh wait, it's Antonio Anderson. Duh. But Hunter, what do you have here in Greenville?
Okay, so been a big Antonio Anderson guy. He has he struggled in 2024, And I said it back then that there were some things I liked. I loved how he drew a ton of walks. He worked counts well. And uh, one of my big talking points was that if there was a low A team, if the Salem or if the Lowell Spinners were still around at the time, he would probably be on the Lowell Spinners. Then 2025 comes around and he absolutely rakes in single A for the first month of the season. Goes to Greenville, struggles for the most part. Then this season starts and he's like barely playing. Fraley Encarnacion's taking up most of the time at first base. And when he does play, it's like once a week and he's doing absolutely nothing. Hold on, let me get the numbers in front of me. So, first month of the season, 4 for 41. So through April, he is slashing 98, 235, 122. Then in the month of May, he slashes 262, 380, 405. Month of June, through the month of June so far, he's slashing 350, 422, 650. This week, he went 11 for 22, 2 doubles, 3 homers, 6 RBIs, walked twice, struck out 4 times. He went 0 for 4 on Sunday. He did hit the piss out of the ball 2 times, but got out. Went on a 7-game hitting streak that obviously got snapped on Sunday. 6 of those games. Wait, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, okay, 6, 7. 5-game double, 5-game multi-hit streak, 3-game homer streak, 3-game multi-RBI streak. Just doing everything right. It was awesome. He 2 of the home runs came from the left side. 1 of the home runs came from the right side. Wilson Contreras just hit a 3-run home run. The Red Sox might actually be good again. Antonio Anderson. Just when he first got here, it was not to invoke Nazan Zanatello's name, but it was very much the Nazan Zanatello. This is a super raw prospect, and the fact that he was drafted, 3rd round, made it feel like a lot of fans probably felt like Antonio Anderson should be producing immediately. And it was like, this is still, at the time, 18-year-old kid who, I think when he got drafted, I think he was 17 years old, a 17-year-old kid who, just isn't ready for professional baseball. Like he's clearly a very talented baseball player, but like this is professional baseball. Like he's going to need time. And it's like this has been his MO so far, is he needs time at each level. And this year it's just been like he wasn't getting the playing time, and then Fraley Encarnacion goes down, and now he's all of a sudden getting regular playing time, and it's just been so cool to see him immediately take advantage of, like, now he knows when his at-bats are coming. And it's like, before it was like, hey, you're playing today, you might not be playing tomorrow or the next day or the day after that. You might be playing next Thursday, and then after that you might be playing next Wednesday, and then the day after that you might not be playing for another week. But like, so you better make the most out of today. So it really felt like he was, trying way too hard. And now it's just like, all right, now if you don't do good today, you'll be back out there tomorrow. So just breathe, relax, you're fine. And it really feels like he knows that. And he's playing relaxed, and it's awesome. And it's like, this is the kid that they drafted. And he literally just turned 21 yesterday. Well, yesterday as of recording, he turned 21 on June 28th. So like, he's still extremely young. He is a first baseman / third baseman. He was drafted as a shortstop, but he has never played the position in the minors. At least I don't think he has. I shouldn't say that without actually checking.
He hasn't played shortstop anytime recently.
Yeah. Okay. He played 23 games there in 2024. But yeah, he's played mainly third base and first base. He's played 146 games at third, 50 games at first, and then 23 at shortstop. But yeah, at this point, he is a third baseman / first baseman. Mainly
I just want to say, FYI, I know this is the minor show. I know we're talking about Antonio Anderson. Remember when I said Caleb Durbin couldn't get any worse about like a month and a half ago?
Oh my God, he just hit a home run. Incredible. This is incredible.
Okay,
dude.
back to Antonio Anderson. Though. I just had to mention that.
But yeah, it's incredible what regular playing time will do for a young person's confidence and development. Like he was sitting 4 times a week, and he was at one point a highly touted prospect in the system, and he was he was the 83rd overall pick in the 2023 draft, and like that's a high value pick. So it's good to see him. I don't know how long he has of this regular playing time, but he's making the most of it, and I'm hoping that the Red Sox take note of it, and at the very least, even if this is brief, of this much playing time, I hope at least it gives him, like a stay of execution of like, okay, well now, let's say Frelian Encarnacion comes back. It's like, okay, well, Antonio Anderson has done enough where, well, now he gets, an extra day a week. Now he gets another day of playing time or something, because this has been very cool to see. Because like obviously this week was big for him, but it has been after that first month, like it has been a very clear improvement in playing time over the last 2 months, over the last 2 weeks especially. So just over the last, him getting consistent playing time, it has been a very clear mark of improvement. So I'm hoping this continues.
Well, this also too goes a little bit into like play the hot hand thing that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Because at some point, is it a hot hand or this is a guy breaking out, right? And that can be hard to judge sometimes, right? That depends on the sample size. But with Anderson right now, it feels like it's starting to turn into this might be a guy breaking out. And you do have to remember too, a lot of guys in Antonio Anderson's position coming into the draft like today, like with how the whole NIL thing has evolved in college sports. If you have a big commitment, you do wonder, would a guy like Antonio Anderson nowadays, say, I'm going to go to college, right? And at that point, he chooses to go to college. Maybe a team drafts him, maybe they don't. Who knows, right? But because of kind of the rawness that you have at, that age, you do wonder, like, okay, nowadays with also too, like, for example, no more Lowell spinners, that the Red Sox can send their guys who just got drafted to, right? Or their guys out of high school too. It's either you're playing the FCL or you're playing in Salem, right? There's no other level to throw them into. So in that sense, like, you do wonder, like, someone similar, like if there's someone today similar to Antonio Anderson, would they just go to college? I know the college ecosystem's a little bit thrown off with NIL now too, though, because some teams don't want to recruit, freshmen and blah, 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 etc. But like the point still stands, right? In an era of NIL, would Antonio Anderson even, go pro, right? With kind of how raw he was with it. And Nazan Zanatello is a perfect example of that too, right? So there's so many raw tools there, and in some ways development can be tough for guys that coming out of high school going to pro ball, just because you've lost that kind of rookie ball level. The complex league has turned into essentially rookie ball, but like even then it's not really a high enough level for rookie ball in some ways. There's no bridge between the FCL and Salem anymore, right? There's no, you don't have a Lowell you can put in between those two levels anymore. Yeah, like but also too, it doesn't make it that surprising that if a guy like Anderson, if this is his breakout, right? It's also not that surprising in some ways, because you kind of look at the grand scheme of things. He's at that age now where a breakout is very feasible, right? And just, I mean, you look at the numbers this week, like it is like it's one of the better weeks we've seen all year. And like you mentioned, he is only 21, just turned 21 yesterday as of recording. And like even like so far this year, he's got the best OPS of his pro ball career this season, and he had that, like you mentioned, such a slow start to the year. So maybe this is that breakout for Antonio Anderson. And like I said, at 21 years old, it's a very feasible breakout it's very reasonable to believe it, right? Like there's a reason he was picked where he was picked. It's a similar thing with Hassan Zanatello. Like I've been saying the last like 2 years, like we're gonna see the Zanatello breakout. Like I think we might be seeing it this year, right? Yeah, it hasn't happened, but like it's reasonable to believe because like there's a reason he was drafted where he was, and obviously not everyone pans out. We saw it with a guy like a Cutter Coffee, right? And Cutter Coffee had his flashes. That is for sure. He definitely had some big flashes, right? But didn't really pan out. He got traded, right? Obviously, it's not like it's really panned out. Hasn't really panned out for him, but like there's a reason. The talent is there. It's just doesn't develop, right? And development's different for everyone. Development paths are different for everyone. Not everyone shoots off into the sun, like shoots straight up and flies through the system. Some guys
Zanatello also certainly has been helped by injuries.
That too.
Like he's played 7 games this year. Like that certainly doesn't help his development.
Well, definitely not this year, but I mean like in general though. But like even last year, right? I was like,
he played 82 games last year. Like, well, he was hurt last year too. Like,
exactly. But like I do think too, like, but like those guys are at the ages where like, hell, even next year I'm probably gonna be like, well, this might be the year for the Zanatello breakout, right? And I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but like, it also wouldn't shock me, right? Just because the talent is there. We've seen the flashes of it. It's when we get to AA, we'll talk about Miguel Bleis too. But like it's believable. There's a difference between, yes, as much as like I love Yassin Garcia, his breakout wasn't the most like. You wouldn't have at the beginning of the year gone, Yassin Garcia is going to break out and turn into a top 100 prospect in debut in the big leagues. Right, potentially. Like you would have been like, if you would have said that to me at the beginning of that year, I would have called you crazy. If someone would have told me that, I'd have said absolutely not. Right? Because it's not that feasible. Going into the year for the outfielder in Salem, not really like, a little bit like older, especially in Salem, not like wasn't someone who's super highly touted. Like, not that it couldn't happen, but it's not like. It's like, okay, but I don't see it happening. Antonio Anderson, if he came into this year telling me, oh, he's going to break out, that'd be something like, oh, that's great. Like, but like, wouldn't have been the most shocking thing either, right? Just because of, like, there's a third round draft pick in 23. He started this year as a 20-year-old, right? It's that age. And he's at that age where, if he is going to break out, odds are like this year's a good year for it, right? So it's not like shocking, I guess, in the way of terms of like if you had to predict a breakout for him, right? This year wouldn't be a terrible year to put your money on for Antonio Anderson. Other than that, I do want to just real quickly touch on the fact that Antonio Anderson's week was so absurd that Luke Heyman hit 3 homers this week, walked 4 times, and had 5 hits in 5 games. Also drove in 8 runs. And don't get me wrong, it is an absurd week. Also, Justin Gonzalez even too. He had a homer this week of his 4 hits. He also walked 8 times and stole 2 bases. Luke Heyman's 3 homer week, like, is still like miles behind Antonio Anderson's week.
Yeah.
Right? Justin Gonzalez's week is still miles behind Antonio Anderson's week. And those 2 guys had really good weeks. Right? Justin Gonzalez had a 636 on base percentage this week. Right? Crazy.
Yeah, Justin Gonzalez walked 8 times, got hit by a pitch twice, and only struck out once. So he had 10 free passes compared to just 1 strikeout is bananas.
Yeah, no, crazy. But like I said, it's the second. If you want to say Luke Heyman's 3-homer week is better than that, it's only the 3rd best week on the team this week, right? Which is, and like there are other weeks where that week from Justin Gonzalez is by far the best week on the team, right? This week, 3rd best week. Hell, don't even get me started here. Ronnie Hernandez, he only had 3 hits this week, but he had a double and a homer, and he walked 5 times. Had a 900 OPS on the week, which generally puts you, 2nd or 3rd on the team in OPS for the week, and some weeks might even put you 1st. And he's 4th, but he's a long way from the top 3, right? Like a long way. Heyman and Gonzalez both had OPSs over 1,200. Antonio Anderson's OPS this week was over 1,500, right? The week those guys had, crazy. And it's funny because we talk about Antonio Anderson wins player of the week. It is the week he had, don't get me wrong, it's crazy, but it's also those other guys, right? Heyman and Gonzalez is having those weeks as well at the same time, right? If you just so happened this week to decide, you know what, I'm going to watch Greenville, right? Probably couldn't have picked a better week. Like, I don't know if you could have picked a better week, just like if the entire season that's happened up to this week between those guys, and we'll get to the pitching as well. I don't know if there would have been a better week to watch Greenville drive baseball than this week so far this season. A lot of good performances. I'll jump it back over to you, Hunter, though. Heyman and Gonzalez, both really good weeks. You can talk about let's start with Justin Gonzalez just because he's the higher ranked prospect. We'll start with him first. He's had a couple weeks recently that have been in the past, I want to say like a month or so. He's had a couple weeks where he's struggled. He's had a couple good weeks too. But this week feels like his best week in a while. The walks definitely do help that with the homer as well. But definitely feels like it feels like one of his better weeks in a while. And that's not to say he's, like I said, not to say he's been bad recently, because he hasn't been. But this is, like I said, a 636 on base percentage in 1 week is crazy. The guy was they might as well have just let him on. They might as well just said, okay, it's your daily schedule to, time to get on base, 636 on base, more than 6 out of 10 times he was getting on base. Just they couldn't get him out. They couldn't. Walks, hit by pitches, 4 hits, couldn't figure it out. What's your thoughts on his week, Hunter?
Yeah, being a leadoff hitter and playing in 5 games and only having 12 at bats is very funny. He hasn't had his usual he's had a little bit of a step down in like the swing and miss and like the chase rate this year. Like, it hasn't been like some massive drop off, but like I feel like I've noticed it a little bit more this year than I did last year, where it was like it feels like he's chasing a little bit more this year. So like this was just such an awesome week to see, where it really just seemed like Justin Gonzalez was locked in, and he was like, man, I'm gonna make you throw pitches that I want to hit this week. And like there was one at bat that really stood out to me. He was 2 for 2 with a home run. He was 2 for 2 with a walk and a home run in a game. And the first pitch of the at bat was an automatic strike because he took too long to step up to the plate. And then the next 3 pitches were all like pitches 10 feet off the plate. The pitcher clearly wanted nothing to do with him. It got to a 3-1 count. And then finally the pitcher threw something like low, but like maybe in the strike, like at his knees, and he smoked it for a single that should have brought in that would have brought in a run if he didn't hit it so hard. So it led to like the bases then being loaded. There was runners on first and second at the time, and again the runner just couldn't score just because he hit it so hard. And it was just like, man, he got to a 3-1 count because he waited until he got his pitch. And it was like, that's what Justin Gonzalez should be doing, man. Like he showed the patience because his bat is so good that teams are scared of him, and they should be. So it's just like, if he shows that patience, he is going to be the best hitter in minor league baseball because his bat is that good, and he does have a really good eye. And it's like, I feel like it was just, he was slumping at one point, and I think he was just getting frustrated, and he kind of lost a little bit of that plate discipline. And it was really good to see a locked in Justin Gonzalez this week.
Yes, it definitely was. What it's, and I think the thing too, you have to do, like, you do have to remember, I mentioned a little bit with Salem, like maybe Salem's offense is kind of getting in their head. You also have to wonder too, like, like Justin Gonzalez, he's young. He hasn't had this year. He's had so much success so far this year. Like, the struggles were bound to come at some point, right? And when I say struggles, I don't mean like, oh, he's going 0 for 20 this week or whatnot. But he wasn't going to be like he was going to have some like more down weeks, right? Occasionally, right? And this week definitely felt like a bounce back for sure. And when I say bounce back, it's not like he was, so bad the last like couple weeks or anything. But like this week definitely felt like a bounce back in the sense of like, yeah, you reach base so much as much as he did this week. He had the homer. I think the bigger thing, honestly, is the fact he only struck out once this week. As the Red Sox killed Miles Michaelis. Just hilarious because the last time they faced him, they smoked him as well. Funnily enough, it was April 6th last year. Michaelis went 2 2/3 and gave up 9 runs, 8 earned. 2 2/3. They're smoking him again tonight. I will just also mention real quick because it's on my mind. We mentioned AAA depth and guys like Sun-Che Chang being important. He's now the Red Sox starting shortstop. This is why too we try to talk about prospects in AAA, but sometimes we do have to mention those MLB depth guys. But back to Justin Gonzalez though. He is he's also one of those guys too where I think because he's such a big human being, right? And he's so like, you see a guy like that, and a lot of people think you immediately see a guy like that, and you go, "Oh, this guy could be a 40 homer guy," just because of the sheer size of him. You might I think you could literally go, if there are any like Red Sox fans who have never seen Justin Gonzalez play, and you showed him one clip of one of his homers, they'd probably be like, "Oh, this guy's gonna be a 40 homer guy one day, potentially," right? And that's not a knock on that's not saying that's an unreasonable thing. But just because, like, how big of a human being he is and how hard he hits the ball, I feel like a lot of people kind of get this false idea of what Justin Gonzalez is. And it doesn't mean, I'm not saying he's not going to hit homers, but, like, he will. But also, too, like, I feel like everyone's, like, people, like, if he doesn't have a homer in a week, he could hit 300. He could hit 400, hell. But if all but one of his hits are singles and the other hit's only a double, like it feels like people, like, you go on like Twitter, for example, and you see the Justin Gonzalez homer, and Hunter, I know you post him. I'm not saying you're the reason for this. You're not, right? You tweet out Justin Gonzalez homer, and you'll see in a comment somewhere or someone quote tweets or whatever, and you'll see like, oh, like Justin Gonzalez crazy. It's like, get him into get him into whatever, get him to Portland and have him smash homers there, or whatever the a little bit outlandish reply or whatever might say, right? And obviously this isn't like a Justin Gonzalez thing. Obviously he's not in control of what the fan base thinks about him. But in some ways I do think with Justin Gonzalez too, we get a little bit disillusioned by the power, not because it's not there or we think too highly of it, but he's not a pure power hitter either. We've seen him have weeks where, he can put the ball into the gaps and he'll still hit the ball hard, but he's not selling out for homers either. Right. And I think that's the thing. Cause a lot of people, it was like, when the Yankees drafted Spencer Jones and they're like, "Oh, he's the left-handed Aaron Judge." It's like, why? Cause he's 6'7". right? And there have been times where even I've gone and it's like, yeah, he's 6'7". You look at guys like Judge and Stanton, and it's all these big guys are typically power hitters, and that doesn't mean Justin Gonzalez won't be a power hitter, but it doesn't mean he can't be more than that either. It also doesn't mean we should expect him, because Jose Altuve has had 30 home run years. That guy, if you just look at body type, should not get anywhere close to 30 home runs, right? But he did, while still being an elite average hitter, right? So in that sense with Justin Gonzalez too, I think he's one of these weird guys where it feels like his skill in some ways almost gets overlooked just because of the sheer size of human being he is, right? Which can be a blessing and a curse at sometimes. And it's not, I'm not saying this is like a bad thing, right? You know, when a guy's that big of a human being, like, yeah, there's a little bit of like, holy smokes. Like, I remember in Worcester when, if this was not Tyron Guerrero's fault, but he almost scared the living shit out of me because I was looking the other way in the hallway from like the locker room towards the manager's office when Chad Tracy was still the manager, waiting for the manager meeting. And Tyron Guerrero basically walked down that hallway from the other direction, and I wasn't looking that direction. And as I turned my head, he like kind of walked by me and almost scared the crap out of me because my eye level felt like it was at his hip. Not actually. I mean, I'm 5'10", like I say 5'10", I round out up. It's really like 5'9" and 3/4, 5'9" and like 7/8 or whatever. We round up to 5'10" because we, might as well. But even then, I like, just because Tyron Guerrero is such a big human being, he's so tall. Like I said, it's like there's intrigue there, right? Peyton Tolley is another one, right? The guy's such a big human being, like it builds that. There's so much intrigue there. Justin Gonzalez is in that similar space where there's so much intrigue because of just the massive sheer size of him, the massive human being he is. But limiting him to that big person archetype, overlooks some parts of his game, right? I'm not saying it's bad to be intrigued by his size, right? Because there's nothing wrong with it. I think we all are, right? I think we're all intrigued by his size. But let's not forget, this is a guy who does have, can't put the bat on the ball. Isn't just a pure power guy. He's not a guy who's striking out 35% of the time, right? And I think that's a thing to remember with him, right? It feels like it feels like weeks where even when he struggles sometimes, he's not racking up strikeouts like crazy. And that's good. That's an extremely good thing, but I do feel like it's overlooked sometimes, right? Just on the sense of, oh, he doesn't have 50 million homers, right? And in some ways it happens with other guys too. Like Franklin Arias is the power surge for him is what's caught all the headlines this year, but we forget, sometimes we forget the thing of oh yeah, well, Franklin Arias still is an all-around player, and not that we forget it, I guess, but more so it doesn't grab the headlines as much as the power, right? Because the whole chicks dig the long ball and the home runs puts butts in seats and everything, which it does. It does, Ask Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, the long ball puts butts in seats. Go ask Bud Selig in 1998 if attendance was up or down. The attendance was up. But we missed some of that, Justin Gonzalez. And we missed some of the things that Justin Gonzalez is really good if you just look at the power. If you just look at the fact that he's a massive human being who hits the ball really hard. You miss some of the other things he does. I do want to real quick mention, I did mention Ronnie Hernandez hit a homer this week. Yoferi Rodriguez also did hit a homer this week. Luke Heyman had 3 homers, so we do have to talk about Luke Heyman. In the whole ecosystem of the catching, and did they bring in too many guys? Did they not bring in too many guys this offseason? Did they overcorrect? How are you going to get everyone playing time? How does that work? Luke Heyman has he's been one of the guys that you get him for Alex Hoppe, and Hoppe's look good at times, but let's be completely honest about Alex Hoppe. As much as we like him, he's a reliever. He's a pure reliever, but he's not one of those guys who you're going to look at and be like, oh, he's a back-end closer or anything. He's not going to be like an elite big league reliever, most likely. Not saying it can't happen, but the consensus on Hoppy. He wasn't that, right? And you go out and get a guy in Luke Kamen for him. Yes, he was a 14th round draft pick by the Mariners. He did get a $230,000 signing bonus, which I think would put you value-wise around like the 8th round-ish, somewhere around then, like value-wise. But this is a guy, too, we have to remember. The guy played at the University of Florida. In 2025, he was All-SEC first team, and he hit .301 with a .397 on base and a .578 slug and a .975 OPS with 13 homers for that University of Florida team. A team, might I add, that not only is typically good in baseball, has had a ton of big league talent even recently, right? So I think when you put all of that in, you put all of that kind of into, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? You put all that into consideration, right? This is a guy who had a very successful collegiate career. His 3 years in college, 12, 16, and 13 home runs. There's definitely pop there. He hit .301 his last year of college in the SEC, right? Where the best talent and especially the best pitching talent is, right? When you look at Luke Kamen, you definitely, there's definitely a lot to like, but he will get overlooked because he isn't, as much as I like to say, he's not your high-end catching prospect, especially with a guy like Franklin Primera really kind of, I guess, really kind of coming out. And in some ways, Luke Kamen being overlooked because he's one of 50 million catchers they brought in the offseason, right? In some ways, he gets a little bit overlooked in some ways because of that. Because in the offseason, it was they brought in A, B, C, D, E, F, G catcher, right? Catchers. They brought them all in, right? If you bring in like 8 guys or whatever the number was, those guys are going to get grouped together, right? So Luke Kamen gets lost a little bit in the shuffle, starts the year in Salem, now is in Greenville, has the stellar week, has been good this year. He's a really interesting guy because he could stick behind the plate. He's not like the elite. He's not like an elite defender or anything. He's not going to. There is a question of whether or not he will stick a catcher. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But with how the bat has looked so far, and you kind of split his numbers between the two levels, 803 OPS in 36 games in Salem, 834 in 24 games in Greenville. There's a lot to like there. There is a lot to like. And also, too, it doesn't hurt. 6 homers at each level. He's got 12 homers this year. And that's in, 60 games? Yep, 60 games on the dot. He's got 12 homers.
Yeah. 200 at-bats on the dot.
Yeah. We start going full season projection for Luke Kamen, and we start looking towards the end of the year. Like, there's a good chance he could be a 20-homer guy this year, right? If he gets really hot over the summer, maybe even 25, right? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like when you start kind of projecting out and you look at like, okay, he's at 60 games. We probably we're basically at the halfway point for the minor league season in terms of games played. We're essentially there, if not maybe a game or two past it, right? There's no reason to say if Luke Kamen continues at this pace, he's going to be in the 20 to 25 home run range. And at the catcher position is impressive, but even at any position that's impressive, right? So whether or not he sticks a catcher long term, I don't think matters for the year he's having. It's a very, very, very good year. And in some ways, I do think gets a little bit overshadowed. Like I said, because he was brought in with all the other catchers, I think he'll be a guy at the end of the year that we look at, or just general kind of Red Sox fans will look at and kind of see the numbers he has at the end of the year, and is like, oh, like he was actually like better than it felt like during the season, just because of he gets overlooked by certain guys at certain levels, whether it's Andy Azkar in Salem or now he's in Greenville, whether it's Justin Gonzalez or Azkar being in Greenville now too, or whoever, or like I said, being in that group of catchers that they were all brought in the offseason, they all got lumped together in some ways. I think he'll be a guy that even now, like I'm saying it right now, it kind of is. I know the 3 homer a week definitely like really jumps forward in terms of like those overall home run numbers and whatnot. But I still feel like he's a guy that, as much as we've talked about him, in some ways still has been overlooked just because, coming out of Florida, they get drafted by Seattle. Then they trade into the Red Sox for Alex Hoppe and get all those other catching process and the amount of catchers they now have. He starts the year in Salem, right? And it's like, okay, you're hoping maybe he'd start the year in Greenville. He starts in Salem, but then plays really well, gets moved to Greenville, played well in Greenville. But like I mentioned, he's been overlooked in some ways he's been overlooked. Sorry, he's been overshadowed by some other guys at times. And in that sense, it's nice to see him have such a good week. And he's overshadowed this week by Antonio Anderson. Funny how that happens. For Luke Haven, has probably the best week of his pro career, and there's another guy who, on his own team, has a better week than him. But regardless, really good week for Luke Haven. But with that, I think we got to move on to the pitching side of things. We got to move on. 2 really good starts this week between Dylan Brown and Devin Futrell. I just want to read their combined numbers on their 2 starts. Combined between the 2 of them, 13 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 23 strikeouts. Combined between Dylan Brown and Devin Futrell. That is obscene. I think you could make the argument they could have won co-pitchers of the week. I think you legitimately could have made that argument. And you know what makes it even funnier? Kyson Witherspoon might have had his best start of the year. And it's just totally overshadowed by the amazing starts from Brown and Futrell. I'll hand it over to you, Hunter. What a week for pitching in Greenville this week.
Yeah, man. I'm sure he's not actually pissed, but Devin Futrell's got to be a little pissed because he had to think after that start that he had the pitcher of the week wrapped up, man. Like 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, career high 12 strikeouts. And then Dylan Brown goes out there and one-ups him by going 7 innings, 2 hits, no walks, 11 strikeouts. Obviously, he had the 1 less strikeout, but he didn't walk anyone, and he went 1 extra inning, so he gets the pitcher of the week honors. I mean, just 2 absolutely absurd outings. Asheville has to be thrilled that they're done with Greenville. Yeah, like they have to be so happy that they're not facing them this week. That has to be like just the biggest monkey off their back. They have to be so happy that they're walking away from Greenville for at least 1 week like that. That had to just be like they had to wake up in night terrors every night. Like, oh my God, Dylan Brown just like waking up screaming because that must have been miserable for them. And like it wasn't even just them. There were we'll get to some other guys that had great outings, but yeah, it was just and both of those guys have been fantastic since getting moved up. We've talked about it ad nauseum how Devin Futrell had no business starting the year in Single A. But yeah, he's had everything working for him all year. He's one of those guys. He doesn't throw super hard, like low 90s, but he has full control of everything he's throwing. And it adds to the nastiness of the pitches when you're throwing it exactly where you want to throw it.
Yeah, I will also just add too, just overall with those 3 starts, it wasn't just those 3 starts. Ben Hansen, 430 innings out of the bullpen in his appearance out of the bullpen. No runs, 4 hits, 4 strikeouts, didn't walk 2. Joe Vigatsky, 4 innings out of the bullpen, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, 6 strikeouts. Right? Like, add those 4 guys up, right? That's what, off the top of my head, that's going to be, like 17 and a third innings of shutout baseball just between those guys.
What 2 did you add? Vigatsky and
sorry, not 17. That's gonna be like 21. Vigatsky and Hansen.
Yeah, because then you could also add Matt McShane through 4 2/3 shutout innings. You could add Tyler Davis through 2 2/3 shutout innings. Hudson White through 2/3 shutout innings.
Screw it, Adam in. It was a little bit of a tale of like pitchers, like because like there were a couple of guys who struggled this week.
Yes. Yeah.
But like I'll put it like there were 3 really good starts for Greenville this week and 3 kind of not so good starts. I guess we'll put it that way. However, I do want to touch on Kyson Witherspoon really quickly, just because I find it kind of crazy that people are already pulling him out of their top 100 lists. Like, this is the one thing I hate about national prospect rankings. You could have a guy break out and play amazing for the first half of the season in their first pro ball season, and they don't get added to the top 100 list. But God forbid a guy has a bad first half of their season to their professional career, and you're off our list. Get off our list. It makes no damn sense to me. If we got to the end of the season and Kyson Witherspoon was still struggling, okay, it's 1 full year. What are we doing, guys? Come on. Like, we're taking Kyson Witherspoon off top 100 list now because he's had a bad start to his professional career when he's only pitched 57 innings. I know he struggled. I get it. Okay. However, in the month of June, 21 1/3 innings, a 3.38 ERA. That's not that crazy at all. But I think even the bigger thing, he's only walked 7, which is the least amount of walks he's allowed in a month. And he struck out 25, which will give him by far the best strikeout to walk ratio he's had in any month. In April, he only had 20 strikeouts compared to 12 walks and 17 2/3 innings. In May, he had just 16 strikeouts to 9 walks and 18 innings. In June, 25 strikeouts to 7 walks and 21 1/3 innings. It feels like he's starting to find himself. And I say that too because you look at, let's go back to May 24th. Heading into that start, he had a 7.18 ERA. May 24th, 4 1/3, 2 hits, 1 run. And that 1 run was off a solo homer. Struck out 6, walked 2. Against Asheville on May 31st, 5 innings, 3 hits, no runs. Did walk 3, struck out 4, but still no runs over 5 innings. Really good outing. His next start, June 6th, 5 1/3, 4 hits, 1 run off a solo homer, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. His next start, he struggled a little bit, right? 5 innings, 5 hits, 4 runs, gave up a homer as well. Walked 3, struck out 4. Since his next start, though, June 19th, 5 innings, 4 hits, just the 2 runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. Right? Last week, and we talked about it last week, how he looked really good. This week, this goes the longest outing of his pro career in 6 innings, 5 hits, just 1 run, only 1 walk, which he's only done 3 other times this year, and then he had 1 no walk start early April 10th. But he struck out 7 as well. And I think really those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, his last 6 starts, only one of them has been bad, and I'd argue it wasn't even that bad. Yeah, 5 innings, 4 runs. It's not great. Don't get me wrong. It's not great. But if that's your worst start in your last 6 starts, considering how he was, like I said, heading into May 24th, he had a 7.18 ERA. He's lowered his ERA to 4.74. This is not a guy you should be taking off your top 100 list. Just should not be. It speaks to like I said, it speaks to, I think, him also getting more comfortable, right? We mentioned in the past how the Red Sox, they've changed his arm action, and they've there are things that, they made changes with him. And a guy like Anthony Heinsohn, sometimes things pop off and they really kind of take off. And other guys, it takes a little bit for them. How many times have we spoken? We've already mentioned it this show. How many times have we mentioned player development's not linear? How many times have we mentioned it on the show? We have mentioned it so many times on this show, how player development's not linear. It's, it's a process. It doesn't just happen all at once, right? We've mentioned it so many damn times. So many times. And I think that speaks, that stays true with Kyson Witherspoon. It's not, the player development is not linear. Yeah, he had a 7.18 in his first, 7 starts? Okay, it's 7 starts out of a guy who you're hoping is going to be a big leaguer for a long time. In 5 years, if Kyson Witherspoon was a good MLB pitcher, who's going to care about these 7 starts at the beginning of his pro career? Who's going to care, right? It feels like the perception of Kyson Witherspoon has changed drastically, even among Red Sox fans, when it's 7 starts. It was 7 starts at the beginning, and since then, like I mentioned, his last 6 starts, he has been good. He has been really good. And I think that we forget sometimes, and I say we as Red Sox fans in general, sometimes we do forget, yeah, these guys are prospects. Yeah, these guys are, they are guys that, the results don't always come straight away. When you see a guy like a Tolle or an Ianson or Roman Anthony or Christian Campbell fly off to amazing starts to their career, we do sometimes forget, okay, yeah, it's not always, I guess you could say, it doesn't always happen straight away, right? But it's nice to see Witherspoon really have those 6 starts where he's really jumped back, kind of came back and has been really, really good. And I think that is crucial. The one thing I will mention too, his struggles mostly this year, you look at his numbers over all of his starts against younger hitters that are younger than him. They're only hitting 200 off of him with a 640 OPS. Hitters older than him, 279 with a 761 OPS. So you can see, okay, struggling against more experienced guys. Those are likely, guys who are in college or were in college and have already played at least 1 year in pro ball, whereas the guys who are younger than him are struggling. So I think in that case, like I said, those last, that last month and some change, he's been very good. His last 6 starts, he's been very good. And it's very nice to see. So in that sense, why are we all losing hope on Kyson Witherspoon? I don't know why. In all honesty, I don't. So that's my bit on Kyson Witherspoon. Let's not lose confidence in him. So yeah, that's my bit on Kyson Witherspoon. Hunter, anyone else we want to touch on the pitching side of things in Greenville?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, so that's Greenville. We are at the hour and 47-minute mark, and we still have 2 levels left. Typical us. We did so good the last 2 weeks, might I just add. Hunter, we did so good timing, and this week. To be fair, a lot to talk about this week. Lots to touch on. Crazy week. Let's move up to Portland as we have another just crazy week to talk about. And he's also the title of this episode for a reason. Miguel Bleis decided that he wanted to remind everyone, why he was so highly thought of and why he was so hyped and why everyone thought he was going to be the future face of the Red Sox. He wanted to just remind us and put on a 4-homer week and doesn't win Player of the Week. I don't know what better week in, the Eastern League would have done it. But someone apparently had better week than a 4-homer week in 5 games. Don't know how that happens, but oh well. Miguel Bleis was great. He also stole 2 bases, walked once, only struck out twice. Big thing, only struck out twice this week. Hunter, it's been a weird couple of years for Miguel Bleis. This week, if you are a Miguel Bleis truther, this is going to be one of the most uplifting weeks there has been in a long time.
Yeah, we've talked about it a ton with him, just how frustrating it is to watch Miguel Bleis and just see how talented he is and how he has all the tools. And you'll watch him have a week where he hits a couple home runs, or he'll have a week where he, hits 300 and he has, a couple infield hits, or he steals a couple bases, or he plays really good defense, or whatever it is. And it's just like, but he never seems to put it all together, or he has a really big week, but then he hits, or he has like a good month, but then he hits 120 the rest of the year, or whatever it is. He gets hurt and it derails his momentum. Um, and we've kind of seen him for the last couple weeks start to put things together. He started the year really cold, and it's kind of been like this gradual build for him where it's gotten a little bit better, but it was still, like he was hitting 145 with 2 homers at the end of April. And he had a much better May, but it was still like that. Like by the end of May, he was hitting 205. He hit 257 in all of May. And he's hitting 276 in June, which is much better. He's up to a 231 batting average. And yeah, like you said, this week was just phenomenal. He hit 348, a double, 4 home runs, 2 stolen bases. He's currently riding a 7-game hitting streak. I'm sorry, a 6-game hitting streak. He has 3 straight games with a home run, 4 home runs in that time. He has a steal in those 3 games. We're seeing the excitement. We're seeing and it's been really fun tweeting about it, because you're seeing the excitement, like the excitement that people had for Miguel Bleis like 3 or 4 years ago. And he's still 22. Like it's not like it's like there's not like negative excitement. It's not like people are tweeting and they're like, "Oh, but he's 25." Like nobody's like a pissy excited. Everybody's like, "Oh, oh man, Miguel Bleis, that's so cool." It's all intrigued excitement. It's all surprised excitement. It's no like negative, "Oh, cool, this guy that we haven't heard of in 12 years who's now super old and no one cares about." So it's been really fun to see people like, "Oh man, this guy, I believed in him. It's cool to see him getting hot again, and it would be cool if he turned into a exciting prospect again." And it's like the overall numbers still aren't anything crazy. Like the 231 batting average isn't anything to get super excited about. But it's like all of a sudden he's on track for a 2020 season. Like he's got 8 homers and 9 RBIs, and it's like the 2020 season is a possibility. Like he hit 14 homers and 27 and had 27 steals last year. It wasn't completely out of the realm of possibility if he stayed healthy. So like it's there. It's something he's talked about wanting to do. And it's just we've seen the tools. All his coaches have talked about it. His teammates have talked about it. People within the organization have talked about it. He's a hard worker. And we're seeing things come together. And it's like we've been tricked before. Like we've seen him have these hot stretches. So it's one of those things where it's like, we can't just see him get hot for a week and be 100% sure that this is definitely like, okay, this means that Miguel Bleis has turned a corner. Like this could absolutely just be, hey, Miguel Bleis is getting hot for a couple weeks and we'll be here in, August and be like, man, remember when Miguel Bleis got hot in June? That was fun. But it's like, hey, this is one of those stretches where it reminds us how freaking fun Miguel Bleis can be. So it's cool to see him. I don't want to say carry the offense because a couple people, including Franklin Primera, has had absurd weeks. But it's cool to see him put together really good weeks. And it's gotten to the point with him. Like, again, this isn't just a 1-week thing. He had a really big week, but he's been good enough where he's become the number 2 hitter in the Portland offense. And it's a Portland offense that's been really good this year. Like they have a lot of people that have been phenomenal. And like when Franklin Arias got a day off, Miguel Bleis was the one hitter. So like they have enough trust in him where he is now the top of the lineup. So that's a really cool thing to see, because when he first got to Salem, he was the top of the order, and that quickly, not quickly, but by the time he got to Greenville, he was hitting towards the bottom of the order. And as we know, that in the prospect world, that usually means that it is someone that they're not super enthralled with, because they're giving the guys they care about the most at bats. So if you're hitting, seventh, eighth, ninth, that probably means that, they're the guys that they want to see the most at bats from. They're putting at the top of the lineup. So they want to see more Miguel Bleis at bats right now. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think the one thing too with Bleis, just it's hard to like get like too like crazy over like just 1 week, but also too like the week he had was actually that absurd where like it's hard to not in some ways. And I guess like you go back to the whole Antonio Anderson discussion, and like it's reasonable that like he could have a breakup. Miguel Bleis is still only 22 years old. He turned 22 on March 1st. There's no reason Miguel Bleis still can't find whatever's in the tank, or still can't find that version of himself that we saw as this super highly thought of guy, right? It's not like he's had the greatest start to the year or anything, but keyword but, it doesn't mean he couldn't have found something either during the year. Like we go back to the Kyson Witherspoon discussion, right? Now it's a little bit different for pitchers because Kyson Witherspoon, his last 6 starts came after the 1 week where he didn't have a start, right? So that 1 week off for Kyson Witherspoon may have really helped him because he had 12 days. He started on May 12th and then didn't start. No, sorry, June 12th and then didn't start again until June. Sorry, not May. Started on May 12th and didn't start again until May 24th, right? Hitters don't really have that luxury, right? They don't have that. Oh, we're going to schedule a week off for you, right? They don't have that, right? So for Bleis, like, who knows? Will he find something? You'll obviously look at his last 3 games of the week, and 5 homers in those 3 games. Really exciting. His batting average in those 3 games jumped from 216 to 231, right? Really exciting. But there is still like the thing with Miguel Bleis where, at least for me, where it's still a little bit of like, we've seen him have good games before. We've seen him have good weeks before. Obviously, his month of June has been good. But you do need to see it over a prolonged period of time. It's just because we've gotten our hopes up, and by we I mean just Red Sox fans in general, Red Sox fans who follow the process. We've all gotten our hopes up on Miguel Bleis time and time again, and then he kind of cools down and it kind of goes away a little bit, right? Hopefully, now is kind of a time where hopefully for Miguel Bleis this continues, right? And this doesn't, I guess, kind of go away. The other interesting thing I want to note on Miguel Bleis, because I found this interesting when I was looking at his numbers, he's hitting over this entire season. He's hitting 250 with a 781 OPS in away games, and he's got 7 homers in away games. At home, in home games, he's hitting 207 with a 563 OPS. I'll then also add on, during night games this year, he's hitting 250 with a 728 OPS in 42 night games. In 16 day games, he's hitting 183 with a 572 OPS.
Interesting.
Those are some really like interesting numbers, right? Yeah. So he's not hitting well in Portland, but he's hitting well everywhere else. You do wonder how much of that too also had to do with cold weather in Portland early in the year, and how much that plays an effect on that as well. But then also like the day games are interesting too.
I also want to point out, I looked up the guy that won Player of the Week. It was Chris Myers for the Erie Seawolves. He hit 524 with 5 doubles, 1 home run, and had 11 RBIs. So he deserved it.
Lame. hit the weight room?
524 with 11 RBIs.
Boo, hit
is
the
pretty
weight
bananas.
room. I'm joking, obviously.
I don't know, man. I think 11 RBIs is pretty bananas.
We've had guys. There have been guys have 11 RBIs and haven't won it before. Come on.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Orlando did not win it.
The long ball, man.
But Orlando also didn't hit 524 when he did it. So
you get the. Boo! We wanted our clean sweep again.
Although Miguel Bleis did lead in home runs for the week. His 4 home runs was the most. The next most was Wilfredo Antunzen and old friend Alex Pinellas.
Oh, hello.
And then a couple other people. I don't feel like listing all of the people with 3, but a bunch of people had 3. That's not Sabin Ceballos and Bo Davidson had 3. I don't know why I didn't just list the other 2.
No, Bleis. I mean, the Bleis' week was definitely carried by his last 3 games.
Yeah, his last 3 games were where all 4 home runs came. But
yeah, but like, I mean, like he played on 5 games. You do wonder if he played in 6 games. Maybe there would have been more counting stats. Who knows? But like, it's also too, the majority of his numbers did come from the last 3 games. But no, although it would have been hilarious just to see Red Sox sweep the Player of the Weeks at multiple levels. Would have been hilarious. But it is Bleis does definitely. So like I said, those are the day game thing versus night game thing is also just interesting. So like that's definitely a wonder, I guess, in some ways, that I have at the very least. It's like, okay, like I wonder, like, if you could just I almost want to know what his stats in night games are when he's on the road. Like, that's almost like an interesting one to me too, because those are the 2 that, where he's been better just in general this year. And I mean, also Miguel Bleis, he hasn't been a top 100 prospect, I think, since the beginning of 2023. It's a long time, right? But that also speaks to the fact, like I said, he's only still 22 years old. Like, it's a while. It is, and I mean, his last 28 days for Bleis, 21 games, 276, 344, 553, 898 OPS. It looks like he has not faced a younger pitcher this year than him. 227 plate appearances, all of them against older pitchers. Every single pitcher he's faced has been older.
I guess that's not that crazy. Double-A, there's not a lot of young pitchers.
Yeah. And he's 22 years old, but he's just turned 22 years old at the beginning of the season. He's what, a month away from it being considered his age 21 season.
Like Anthony Ionson's 21,
yeah.
and then Jedickson Paez is probably what, 23, 22, and then I bet you everybody else on the Portland roster is probably 24. Gage Zeal's probably 23, but still, that's younger or older than Bleis. So
yeah, and I'm assuming Paez is probably older too. Anyways, I'm assuming he might be older. So even then, it's only Ianson. Ianson didn't even start the season in Double-A. Right? So, and it is interesting. I mean, the one thing I will say so far this year, Bleis has hit lefties really well, which, if you're projecting, future, MLB potential, as a righty being able to hit lefties at the very worst, and he can run, he's good defensively, long term for him, God forbid, worst case scenario, maybe there is a roster spot for him somewhere as a guy who can hit lefties if that continues as he moves on, right, with the defense and the speed, right? But obviously you are hoping that kind of this month of June pretty much is a turnaround for him. And these last 3 games are the exclamation point on it, right? And the real, this is you're hoping it's the exclamation mark, the point on the exclamation mark saying, this is legit. This isn't just a good month. That's what you're hoping. And yeah, grand scheme of things, who knows how the next week, how the next 2 weeks, how the next month, how the rest of the season is going to play out. We don't know. He's also an interesting case because he's Rule 5 eligible. And like I said, good defender, runs well, has hit lefties good this year. Who knows? Who knows? We've seen weirder things. Akil Baddoo was taken in the Rule 5 draft. We've seen weirder things. The Red Sox took Jonathan Arauz in the Rule 5 draft. And he wasn't even a once, hyped, crazy prospect like Miguel Bleis. Would not shock me if we get to the end of this year and he's not traded. If Miguel Bleis is not traded and he is not protected for the Rule 5 draft, don't be shocked if someone takes him. The tools might be too much to pass up on. But if he does continue to play well the rest of the year, don't be shocked if he is protected. Because like I said just a second ago, the tools might be too good to pass up on, and it might be a guy you have to put on your 40-man because of that. It's going to be a very interesting next month for Miguel Bleis, because if he continues to play well, it's depending on which way the Red Sox go at the deadline and depending on where they lie on him and if they want to protect him or not, a la Blaze Jordan last year, right? What's the future for Miguel Bleis? Is it with the Red Sox? Is it not? Is it a Rule 5 potential? Is he in the Rule 5 draft? Does he get protected? How is it all going to play out? It's going to be a very interesting next month and rest of the season for Miguel Bleis. And it's unfortunate to talk, Rule 5 draft. We don't want to lose him, but he's one of those guys where the upside is so high but just even with the defense and the speed, I could easily see a team taking him, especially if he finishes out the year well. So he's going to be an interesting follow, not just for Red Sox, not just for Red Sox reasons of we want to see his development. He's going to be interesting also between the Rule 5 draft, the trade deadline, 40-man roster, all that kind of stuff. He's going to be an interesting watch. An interesting watch because other teams are going to be watching him too because they know he's Rule 5 eligible. They know he could be a deadline trade candidate because of that. They know that the tools are there, right? So he's going to be a really interesting watch. Someone we do have to talk about, though, as always in Portland, Franklin Arias. And this is not a shot at this person. We love this person. He's a friend of the show. We love him. Tyler Milliken put out a tweet. And at the end of the tweet about Arias, and I think at the end of the tweet, it was he said something along the lines of why isn't he in Worcester right now? Or how hasn't he not been promoted to Worcester? And we love Milliken here. We love him. Like I said, friend of the show. That tweet scared me so much because the last thing we need is more people clamoring for Franklin Arias to Worcester when it's not going to do anything. Because we come on here every week. He's not going to get, it'll happen when it happens, right? Patience, right? It'll happen when it happens. There's no rush. We don't need to move him to Worcester for him to be the savior of the Red Sox season, right? We don't need it. He'll get promoted when he gets promoted. And like I said, we love Tyler Milliken. There is nothing wrong with this tweet either. We totally understand his tweet, right? And we do, and in some ways too, when is he going to get moved to Worcester? In some ways, when's it going to happen? But also too, there's nothing wrong with letting him sit in Portland a little bit longer. We just mentioned Miguel Bleis has not faced a pitcher younger than him. Franklin Arias is 20, people. Miguel Bleis is 22. Franklin Arias is 20. So when we say Miguel Bleis hasn't faced a pitcher younger than him, what are the odds that there's no way Franklin Arias has faced a pitcher younger than him if Miguel Bleis hasn't, right? Don't get me wrong, Arias has been amazing this year. He's due for a call-up. But it's going to happen. There's no rush. He's still facing pitchers that are older than him in Double-A. The biggest concern, I guess you could say, the biggest concern with bumping up to Triple-A is in AAA, a lot of the guys in AAA aren't looking to develop. They're looking to get guys out to get to the big leagues. In AA, a lot of guys in AA are still developing, right? When you bump Arias up to AAA, you're still going to be worried about his development as the Red Sox.
I think that's a good thing, though.
No, I think it's a good thing. However, no, I think it's a good thing. You're going to be worried about his development as the Red Sox. The guys against him are going to be doing everything they can to get him out instead of working on your changeup in a 1-2 count because you need to work on your changeup. It's a good thing. However, this is why I point this out. If Franklin Arias goes up to AAA and doesn't tear the cover off the ball like he's been doing in Portland because he's facing the Woo Sox game I went to where Max Scherzer was on his rehab assignment, I think every single pitcher for Buffalo in that game had MLB experience. That's not a bad thing for Franklin Arias. It is not. However, if he doesn't tear the cover off the ball in AAA, let's not get our panties in a bunch and act like he's this big flop. Because the caveat of everyone calling for him to get to AAA is a lot of these people begging for him to move. There's a lot of people who are begging for him to get to AAA, expecting for him to continue the same level of play with the hope of him being the savior for the Red Sox this season.
Yes, but the Red Sox also aren't going to care.
I'm not saying
it's
the
not
Red
like
Sox
the Red
care.
Sox. Yeah, I know, but I mean, it's not like the Red Sox are going to be like, oh man, Red Sox Twitter is upset that Franklin Arias isn't hitting 350 like he was in AA.
Oh no, but I'm just saying, temper your expectations a little.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Please, and I've been saying this, but this is because when he faces up, then this is the name that's popping in my head because he pitched for Buffalo. I think it was Buffalo that game. Like Colin Holderman, right? This is a guy who's been a decent MLB reliever. When Franklin Arias faces a guy like that in AAA, it's different than facing a 24-year-old prospect in AA. It just is. It's not a bad thing. You want him to see those guys before he gets to the big leagues. It's absolutely true. However, if Franklin Arias, he's hitting right now, he's 329. We'll call it 330 with 15 homers we'll call it a 1,000 OPS because it's 995, right? If he's not hitting 330 with 10 homers and however many in his first 2 months in AAA with 1,000 OPS, doesn't mean it's a failure. Hell, if he only hits 225, or if he only hits 250 in Worcester with the rest of the year with 5 homers, it doesn't mean it's a failure, right? Sometimes for players, the most development they'll do is after they've had a bad stretch, or after they've, maybe they get moved up a level for the last 40 games of a year and they struggle, but that they learn something about themselves, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's going to happen to Franklin Arias, but if it does, it shouldn't be seen as this massive failure of he went to AAA and sucked and he's not the guy we thought he was. No, it just meant he struggled, right?
I don't think. First off, I don't know if we even said this. He went 11 for 24 with 2 doubles, a homer.
He had a great week.
Yeah, 3 walks to just 1 strikeout, 5 RBIs. I don't even know if this discussion even super matters because I think the whole reason he's not getting called up, I don't think it even really has to do with the whole, like, there's the discussion of like, oh, development means more in AA than it does in AAA because in AAA you're focused more on getting them ready for if they're needed in the majors, whereas in AA you're focused more on the development, blah, 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 blah. I just think it's more like they don't foresee using him in the majors this year because
that was more so my point.
At the moment, they're bad. Yeah.
That's more so the point what I mean in terms of like when he gets up to AAA, he's not facing he's going to be facing guys that are trying to get to the big leagues, and that is a good thing for his development. But in the sense of the Red Sox, we just saw it with Sung-Chae Chang, right? Sung-Chae Chang is now the Red Sox starting shortstop, right? There needs to be in some way, and I'm not saying that Arias is not good enough for AAA. This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a lot of the parts of AAA too is that depth. If they would have called Arias up a month ago, what happens to Chang? How does
Yeah.
his playing time
Yeah.
get affected, right? How does that affect the big picture of, because Story gets hurt, now Myers hurt. What happens if Arias is in AAA playing shortstop every day and Chang hasn't touched shortstop in a month? It's not that Chang can't play shortstop, but like things like that do matter in some sense. And like I said, it wouldn't be good for Arias to go against guys that are trying to get him out. Yes. But also, too, it doesn't, like, can we not expect him to hit 330 in AAA? Like,
and I just,
and I think, too, like, the development for Arias is, like, when you get to AAA, you are trying to make big leaguers. For Arias, that is still development, right?
Yeah.
I think we do have to remember, too, at the age of he's 20 years old, right? This goes back to the whole development thing, too. There's, within reason, things that he can still be working on in AA that don't require a move up to AAA. That doesn't mean he's not going to get that call up to AAA. It's going to happen. I'm telling it will happen, right? But they could be telling Franklin Arias, you know, they could have told him a couple weeks ago, hey, we want you to work on X, Y, and Z, right? Or you're doing this very well, but we want to also see you do this good at the same time, right? For example, like the power increase has been great, but they might be looking at him and say, yeah, the power increase is great, but we also want you, maybe they want him to work into counts more or work deeper into counts, right?
Well, my point was, I don't think it matters. And I think it's all moot until after the trade deadline anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think anything's happening until after the trade deadline, and then they'll figure everything out. Because then at that point, then it was they either bought or they sold, and then they'll make their decisions on, all right, well, this is the direction that we decided to go in. And now we're deciding, okay, well, now we've either punted on the season or we've decided, you know what, we have a chance. And then at that point, okay, now we'll move you up with the intent of, hey, maybe in September we'll give you a look now that the season's over. Or, hey, maybe in September you can help us push towards the playoffs if like we need help. But like as of right now, I just don't think that they're even thinking about him in AAA just because the team's in such a weird position. I just don't think that, like, I get it that he clearly is too good for AA. I just feel like people are expecting it every
There's
week
no rush.
when the fans are expecting it every week, and I feel like the organization just like isn't even discussing it right now, just because they're like, we're not in a position to be discussing this right now.
No, and I think the other thing too, and I hate to say it in this way because it's going to come off as like they don't care, but they have more important things on their table right now.
Yeah.
They literally but beyond like the whole deadline, they have the MLB draft as well. Like, let's not forget, like, this is why the whole, like, I've been saying this last couple weeks, but like, I don't think it's going to happen until the All-Star break. One, because the All-Star break's the perfect timing to do a promotion. One, it is the legitimate perfect timing. And two, they do have other things on their plate. Right? The MLB draft is on July 11th. That's less than 2 weeks away. Do you think if you go to, you know, people in the Red Sox front office, you know, right now, and you're asking, even Craig Breslow's got his hand in the draft because, you know, as much as the trade deadline is important, like, the Red Sox aren't going to take a first round pick without the approval of Craig Breslow. Hell, they might not even take a second or third round pick without his approval. Yeah, in the 19th round of the draft or whatever, Craig Breslow's going to defer to his guys, to his draft guys.
Yeah.
Right? Especially early in the draft. I could be the draft director making the biggest case in the world for, let's say, Brody Bermilli, because he's, you know, Massachusetts kid, whatever. And I'd be like, well, he's a local kid, and he's this big left-handed pitcher. We like pitchers with great extension, and he's this big, tall lefty, and he's from Massachusetts, and could make the most compelling case ever, right? But if Craig Breslow says, no, we like this guy better, odds are,
it's over. Yeah.
Yes, right? And I mean that in the sense of, like, there are other concerns the organization has right now that are the month of, like, leading into the MLB draft in the deadline, it's probably the busiest the front office is going to be all year, because it's different than free agency when, yes, free agency, you're busy, but like you're not actively scouting, you know, I don't know, like you're like when Juan Soto is a free agent, everyone knows how good Juan Soto is. You don't need to go scout him or go look at the tape. You know how good he is. He's Juan Soto, right? When it comes to even your first round draft pick in the MLB draft, hell, even if you had the first pick, you're scouting these guys because you don't know, right? You don't, they might like, you're projecting, right? And I think in a lot of sense with that, like with Franklin Arias, like as much as we think, or as much as we as fans might think that it's a priority for him to be moved up to Worcester because of how good he's been in Portland, it's not a priority because there's so many other things on the table. And yes, he's going to force their hand in bumping him up to Worcester. But here's the other thing too. Like I said, when mentioned with the draft and the All-Star break following right up. One, the All-Star break is the perfect time for promotions. Teams aren't playing for a couple days. Players go home, and then they all come back to whatever level they're at. It's a perfect time for a promotion in that sense. You don't have to worry too much about logistics and moving guys around. Typically, it's a good chance also, too, if you want to move Arias up to Worcester, maybe you want to move someone up from Greenville to Portland as well, right? And like this, that's a good time to do stuff like that. Also, too, it also makes sense, too, because at this point now, there's 2 weeks until the All-Star break. It's not happening this week. You got 1 more week left. And what's the point of moving Arias up to Worcester for 1 week just for him to then go home or go wherever for the 3 days they're not playing, 4 days they're not playing, and then just to come back? So, like, at that point, just keep him in Portland until the All-Star break and then move him up to Worcester then, right? It doesn't make sense to move him up to Worcester for 1 week before the All-Star break. The timing just is, it's a weird timing, right? And also, too, I think the other thing, too, when you're promoting a guy like Arias, like that is going to be a big discussion. It's not a nilly-willy move you make, right? That's a sit-down discussion where Breslow's going to be involved with that. Brian Abraham's going to be involved with that. Guys like people like Eddie Romero, etc., are probably going to be involved with that. There's a whole bunch of people there's people who are going to be involved in those discussions who, as of right now, have other priorities, right? After the draft, during the All-Star break, you know what they're going to have plenty of time to do as they start their prep for the deadline? To sit down and discuss Franklin Arias. They'll have plenty of time. There will be time to do that, right? And so in that sense, like, don't get me wrong, I love the enthusiasm we're seeing about Franklin Arias. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But there's no rush. Once again, we saw it with Roman Anthony and last year, right? Before when we started the year in Worcester, right? And it's, why is he in Worcester and Christian Campbell's on the big league roster? Right? Different situation, but like with Roman Anthony, it's like, well, there's no rush, right? There's no rush, right? And I think with Arias, in some ways, there's no rush because this isn't moving him from Worcester to the big league team where they needed a shortstop because Marcelo got hurt. There's no rush because even if you move him up to Worcester 2 weeks ago or 2 weeks from now, it doesn't affect his MLB outlook, right? It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't affect the rest of his season. We know he's most likely going to end the year in Worcester anyways, more likely than not. And if he does end the year with the big league team, great. There's also an incentive for them to not rush him to the big leagues because also, too, he's going to end the year as a top 5 prospect in baseball, most likely. And let's just say in 2027, he wins Rookie of the Year. Dangle that draft pick in front of Craig Breslow and the rest of the front office's face. There's no rush. No rush for Franklin Arias. Trust me. If they thought it was necessarily to need him in the big leagues this year, at some point this year, he'd have been in Worcester probably a month ago. There's no rush. Simple as that. And also, too, like I said, the pitching will be different because you're not going to be facing this guy for the third time this year, and it's the third straight start he's working on his changeup. or the third straight start, he's working on his slider, right? It is different, right? Doesn't mean Arias can't be successful there, but it's a different feel. It's a different feel because you're going to be facing guys that are. It's double A is not. You're mostly looking at development. In triple A, there's some development, but you're going to be going against the guys who've either already been in the big leagues and trying to make it back, or are trying to make it to the big leagues for the first time. It is a different. I guess it's a different type of game. I guess, right? Because in double A, I'll compare it to. Actually, I'll compare it to Peyton Tolley earlier this year. Peyton Tolley starts the year in Worcester. Why? Because it gives him the chance to work on his secondary stuff before having to get to the big leagues where you're going to need that secondary stuff to get guys out, right? In Worcester, it gives him that chance. It's different than Tolley because you can't send Tolley down to double A, right? But some 23-year-old in double A that, maybe has a really good fastball, his team might tell him, don't throw the fastball that much. We want you to work on the secondary stuff. You're facing the 30-year-old in AAA who's a reliever who has a really damn good slider. Odds are he's throwing that really damn good slider, right? He's not going to work on his changeup. He's throwing that damn slider, right? Tommy Canley in Worcester. He's not throwing some curveball that he just learned the other day. He's throwing his changeup, right? Like, it's not a bad thing for Miguel Bleis to face that. It's a good thing. But don't accept him. Don't go in with the expectation of him blowing everyone's socks off, because then if it doesn't happen, it doesn't mean he's a bad prospect or a bad player or a bust. It just meant he had some struggles against competition that is better than the AAA level. Better than the AA level. It happens. Development's not linear. Let it play out. The promotion will come. There's no rush. And also, I can't wait till we don't have to talk about this, but there's no rush. I think we're on the same boat, Hunter, with that. We cannot wait till we don't have to talk about Nari's promotion to Worcester because it'll have happened. With that, Jack Winay. I'll hand it over to you, Hunter, quickly on Jack Winay because we're already at the 2.5 hour mark almost. We went in on him a little. Like, I felt like was last week. Was last week? Or the week
it was
before?
last week.
Last week where we really discussed him. And this week he had a good week in Portland.
Yeah, he was promoted. 4 for 18, a double, a home run in very Jack Winay fashion. In his first week in Double A, he draws more walks than strikeouts. He walks 5 times, only strikes out twice. Just awesome to see that he immediately looks very comfortable at the level. He was getting a lot of praise on the Hartford broadcast. Even though they did call him, when he hit his home run, they did call him Jake Winay. Also looked like when he hit the home run, it looked like it was very chaotic. He hits the home run, the guy's calling him Jake, and he hits the home run, and the ball lands near a guy, and I can't tell if the guy's upset with himself or if he's like yelling at his wife. Either he was yelling at himself or he was yelling at his wife, and I was like, dude, that's not, either way, it's not a good look for you. Like, you're either yelling at yourself or you're yelling at your wife, but either way, just like it's a bad look for you. But like really good first Double A week for Jack Winay. Just like kind of what you should expect from him a lot. 222 batting average is not like spectacular, but 391 on base percentage is awesome. Hits the home run, hits the double. He's now up to 12 home runs on the year between the two levels combined. Some of the best draw power in the system. And just like the plate discipline has been otherworldly. Very quickly flying up my rankings, flying up a lot of people's rankings. I know Sox prospects have been very intrigued by him. Andrew Parker seems to be really intrigued by him. Just Jack Winay has been one of the bigger surprises, one of the bigger positives of this year from the position player side of things. Portland's offense has been, I don't want to say like a surprise, because again, like we knew when Yohan Fran Garcia and when Brooks Brandon got healthy that they were probably going to be big positives and big additions to help Franklin Arias and like Miguel Bleis was always going to kind of be like a wild card. But they have been a very powerful offense this year, and the addition of Jack Winay, this becomes an absolutely terrifying offense for however long Franklin Arias is there. And if they add a couple more bats from Greenville whenever they decide to start making more promotions, this Portland team is just absurdly terrifying.
Yeah, it feels like the lineups really came together, and so like when you kind of look at like the lineup, like right now you look at like their roster from Sox prospects, and you go, okay, Nate Baez catching, Brooks Brandon's at first, Alcantara at second, Jack Winay is now at third, and then Arias at short, obviously, and then they have Matt Frazier in left field, and then Bleis in center, Nelly Taylor in right. I think that you really kind of get like this lineup really kind of gets, what's the word I'm looking for? You can really kind of see it being built and coming together and being more than just Arias and other guys, right? It feels like between, especially, I know Brandon have a great week this week, but with Brandon and Garcia and now Bleis being hot, right? And Jack Winay moving up there, it feels like this is a lineup that now also too can sustain, if we kind of look at like for our viewing pleasure and hoping the offense isn't bad, for our viewing pleasure. When Franklin Arias leaves, it looks now like a team that can sustain that loss or can overcome that loss. So in that sense, I think. Because I think there was a couple points earlier this year where it's like, well, when Arias gets promoted, it's like, what's the Portland lineup going to look like? It's like, you get Brandon and Garcia, but like, who knows, right? And that doesn't even start on the fact of like Nelly Taylor this week he only had 3 hits this week, but one of them was a double. He drew 6 walks, stole a base, right? Hasn't really gotten things going this year, but like, doesn't mean that can't come, right? And so you kind of start looking at that lineup and you go, okay, like we can kind of see that lineup coming together even without Arias there. And that is big because at the beginning of the year, like we did question it, Arias, and then who's going to be the guy that helps him? Well, it's not just a guy who's going to help him. There's multiple guys, and that's important. And that's a really nice thing to see because it also speaks to how, the team has really kind of the team has been better than we thought. It's not just one guy. That group of guys has been better than we thought, even outside of Arias being better than we thought, which I don't even know if we thought that was possible. But Arias has been better than expected, but so has everyone else around him, right? And so that's, the overall group as a whole offensively. It's been nice to see for Portland. And then also, too, they also added Matt Frazier, who at 28 years old, yeah, he's older, but like he's an interesting one too because depending on, I know he's only played 5 games, but he's got a homer and he's got 7 hits in those 5 games. He's got a homer. Who knows how long he'll be in Portland? Just because there's a chance he could get moved up to AAA as depth, but like now you have that's a guy who's a veteran. He was once a top prospect. He's a veteran too, so pass on some knowledge to some of the young guys too. That's a guy who he's had his struggles, but that's not like a bad thing because he can also show some things to the young guys that, hey, I learned, I've learned this, I've learned that, right? It's not a bad thing to have a vet around either. Especially too, because I think the oldest position player on that team was Drew Earhart, I think. And obviously he is not with them anymore. He's the Red Sox bullpen catcher, which I will always say, shout out Drew Earhart. Good, great for him to, be able to be a bullpen catcher, and who knows what that's going to lead to for him. But also having another vet around doesn't hurt, right? So in that case, but also it wouldn't shock me if he gets moved up to Worcester relatively soon, just on the fact that right now their outfielders are Alan Castro, Braden Ward, and Christian Campbell, and that's it. I know Ferguson and McDonough can play the outfield, but they're also kind of needed in the infield right now because it's at the point where Juan Montero's actually not on the dev list anymore, because if he was still on the dev list, they'd only have 2 bench players, and one of them would be a catcher, Matt Tice. So that kind of speaks. And also, too, he did get shout out for Juan Montero. He did get in a bat with Worcester this week. I know we're not Worcester yet, but I did want to shout that out as well. But like that speaks to how, like, you think the MLB team is suffering with depth? Worcester, oh gosh, oh, that is a rough one. It is obviously Gasper is going to be going down, and that'll help them a little bit too. But still, that is. They need some guys in Worcester too soon, and when I say guys, I don't mean like, oh, hurry up and call ours. I mean like they need guys who can just help, and like Matt Frazier is one of those guys who don't be shocked if he's in Worcester in like a week or two, depending on how things shake out with certain guys on the MLB roster and health wise and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, nice to have. It isn't a bad thing to have a vet around either. On that case, also. Worcester's also getting to the point where they just might need bodies as well. So I think that's another kind of interesting thing to watch. Not necessarily on the Portland front, because we've seen it happen to guys in high A before, but I think that's an interesting thing to kind of keep on like the back burner. Just Worcester might need guys, and I don't know how many guys they can just sign who are free agents or out of indie ball just for the sake of needing a guy, right? Because with the draft coming up, they need spots in the organization. And there's only so many spots. So that's kind of a I think that'll be an interesting thing to watch too over the next couple of weeks. Not a big plot, but something I guess to keep kind of on the back burner in the back of your head, just to kind of wait and see. Also just mention real quick, Albert Leando had 4 hits in the 4 games he played. He also walked twice and he stole 3 bases. Marvin Alcantara stole 2 bases and had 7 hits this week with 5 RBIs as well. So I kind of bumped those 2 out there as well. Anything else, Hunter, on the position player side?
Nope. We're at 236.
Yep.
So.
237. We are. Woo! This one's a long one. To the pitching side of things here, we're gonna start with Blake Wehunt, 1 pitcher of the week, 6 innings, 1 hit. No runs, 8 strikeouts, no walks. We've mentioned it a little bit with Worcester and how their rotation's kind of all over the place between injuries and the big league team and that kind of stuff. Patrick Sandoval's rehabbing, although he's going a little bit longer in his outings. They have Brian Bayo there now. And Sox prospects, Jack Anderson is in the rotation now instead of being under like the bullpen section. And then it's just Raymond Burgos. That's it. They could definitely use a starter, and we've been wondering. I think I mentioned it last week where none of the guys in Portland have really gone out and grabbed and been like, "That's my spot to take." Those guys have been good. Maybe have had a bad start here and there, but nobody's had that like overwhelming like, "That's my spot. This is a start to prove that's my start." Arguably up until Blake Wehunt this past week, with that 1-hit performance, and that doesn't mean that other guys like Hayden Mullins and Holobets, and other guys there aren't deserving of it, because those guys have been good at times. They've been good in the past. They've had good starts this year, but they have, like I said, there hasn't really been, even Wehunt up until this week included, there hadn't been a guy who just went out and just was lights out dominant, making that truly like being like that should having a start that seems more like a statement of that should be my spot trip to in Worcester should they move someone up from Portland. And I felt like Wehunt's one of those guys that we've talked about that could be a guy that gets a chance to move up to Worcester. They do need arms, and like I said, an 8 strikeout performance with no walks, only 1 hit, no runs over 6 innings. It's about as nice of a statement you can get outside of not giving up any hits. There's not much better you can do that. Hunter, what are your thoughts on Wehunt's start and just his year as a whole?
Yeah, he's been surprisingly, I don't want to say surprisingly, he's been really good control-wise this year, which it's an underrated part of his game. I feel like it's something that maybe with his frame and his velocity, and I don't know, maybe just something with like the velocity and his inability to stay on the mound. For some reason, just something about that combination as a pitcher would lead you to believe that he's not someone that throws a ton of strikes, but he throws a ton of strikes. 57 strikeouts, just 12 walks on the year and 43 innings. And that's been a trend for him. 76 strikeouts, just 29 walks and 63 and a third last year, and then 110 strikeouts, 34 walks and 97 and a third in 2024. So like it's not like it's some new thing that's cropped up. But yeah, he's been fantastic. Again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's just really good to see him get like a nice long stretch of games where he's healthy. And like he hit a little bump in the road, but even then, it was kind of just like he would have one bad inning and he would kind of figure things out from there. And this was just, I mean, an absurdly dominant start. Just the one hit, no walks, 8 strikeouts. And just he was toying with people out there. He regularly hits the high 90s. Yeah, everything about this start was fantastic. And like you said, Worcester needs arms. Blake Wehunt's someone who at the start of the year felt like a prime candidate for, if he looks good, should be ready for AAA almost immediately, and he's looked good, so it feels like it's time.
Yeah, I do want to run through just the pitching this week as a whole and kind of go down the list of guys, because a lot of good appearances this week. So Wehunt had his start, obviously. Gage Zeal, 5 2/3 innings, 2 hits, no runs. Walked 1 and hit 1, only 3 strikeouts, but still, I mean, 5 2/3 innings of scoreless ball. Like, what are you going to really complain about that? Anthony Ianson gets overshadowed in a way by the numbers, but still a really, really good start. 5 2/3 innings, 3 hits, just a 1 run. Did walk 3, didn't only struck out 2, but still 5 2/3, almost 6 innings of 1 run ball. Are you really going to complain about that? John Holobetz, 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 6 innings of 1 run ball. No complaints. Hayden Mullins, even 4 2/3, 2 runs, did give up 6 hits, did walk 3, but 6 strikeouts. Fought his way, almost got through 5, and he still only gave up 2 runs, right? Like, these, like, and I'll use the comparison, like a quality start can be like 6 innings and 3 runs gets you a quality start, and that averages to a 4.50 ERA. 4 innings and 2 runs also averages out to a 4.50 ERA. You know, yeah, and so when I look at these guys, like in the minor leagues, if you only go 4 innings, if you go 4 innings or more and you give up 2 or less runs, that is a nice start, right? So Mullins with that, not the perfect start, but you will take that. If that's an okay start for him, that is great, right? Michael Sansone out of the bullpen, 4 1/3, 3 hits, 2 runs, walk 2, 4 strikeouts. But then again, just over 4 innings, only gave up 2 runs, right? Out of the bullpen. I'll even give Dalton Rogers a shout out just on the fact of he did struggle a little bit. He gave up 4 runs in 5 innings, gave up 5 hits. He didn't walk any, only hit a guy, 5 strikeouts. One of those starts where in the grand scheme of things, right, if, he still got through 5 innings, right, and if you kind of copying it to like a major league level of thinking, kind of a big league team level of thinking, your starter gave you 5 innings. He still got you through 5 innings, saves your bullpen, right? And I know it's a little bit different. It's different in the minor leagues, but like if you struggle through a start, but you still give 5 innings, like I'm cool with that, right? In some ways, because it's not like he gave up 4 and then was out in like the 3rd inning, right? Or out after 3. He still went 5 innings overall. Did he give up 4 runs? Yes, but it's one of those things where that's your worst start of the week at the level. you had a really, really, really good week pitching wise. If that's your worst start at at that level, and even then, that doesn't even include the bullpen. Max Carlson, 2 1/3 scoreless out of the bullpen in 2 appearances with 4 strikeouts. Patrick Halligan, 2 2/3 in 2 appearances, scoreless, no hits, no walks, 5 strikeouts. Eric Rivera with a clean, well, almost clean inning. He did give him 1 hit, but no runs, 2 strikeouts. Reyes Sena did give up an unearned run, but no earned runs over his inning. Cooper Adams did give a run in 2 innings, but he did strike out 3. Jennings and Paez gave up 1 run in 2 1/3. Struck out 3. He did walk 2. The lone run he gave up was on the solo homer, which is the only hit he gave up. And I guess similar terms, I guess, to the 3 runs over 6 innings being quality start, and then 4 over 2 being like the same ratio, 2 runs over 4 innings, the same ratio. 1 run over 2 innings is the same ratio. So I guess if you want to look at it that way, I guess, I mean, it's still fine. I guess that's the way you want to look at it. So, and then your 2 work, like Caleb Bowman and Jeremy Lin didn't have like great weeks, but like that's it. Like 2 guys didn't have great weeks. Outside of that, everyone else pitched at the worst okay. Like that is a good week. That was a really good week for a pitching staff. There really isn't much bad you can say about the pitching staff as a whole. And typically in the minor leagues, you'll see a staff where, a guy you have maybe 3 to 4 guys who pitch well that week, and maybe there's 3 or 4 guys who struggle that week, and then everyone else in the middle is just okay, right? This week for Portland, it feels like there was like a handful of guys who pitched really good. Everyone else, barring maybe 1 or 2 guys, pitched okay, and then you maybe had a guy or 2 who struggled, right? And even like Jeremy Williellen, he struggled in his first appearance of the week. 2 days later, comes out, strikes out the side. Like 3 up, 3 down, 3 strikeouts, right? So overall, crazy week for the pitching in Portland. Just overall, a really good week. The week for Portland, when you just look at them based on individual performances between the top end for the hitters and the top end for the pitchers, just in terms of performances, might be the best we've seen at one level over 1 week since the start of the show. Maybe like I can think of another week where we've had like this many like really good performances in a week at one level on both sides of the ball. And I mean, Greenville this week even gets close to that, but I mean, between that, you look at like the entire pitching staff of Portland this week, and really no bad weeks with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, and a lot of good performances. And the hitting side of things, you had some guys who did really good things this week. There really isn't much to dislike this week with Portland, especially on the pitching side, which seems rare because it's really rare when you have a week where just about everyone pitches well, right? You're typically going to have a couple outliers. There really wasn't that outside of maybe 1 guy this week. So overall, great week from the pitching staff in Portland. But with that, Hunter, anything else, Hunter?
Nope.
Cool. Perfect. Now up to Worcester. We'll start on the position player side again. Miggy Romero did have 2 homers this week. Not the craziest week. We were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I was like, this week is like the essence of Miggy Romero in some ways. We love him. Friend of the show. Love Miggy. But it spoke a little bit to some of the concerns like you would have with Miggy, where he only had 3 hits this week, right? 3 for 18. You look at that, not great, right? But he puts up the 2 homers, and Miggy's one of those guys where at any given time can hit one out of the ballpark, right? And especially too, realistically, maybe I think he's more of a second baseman than a third baseman, in all honesty. So when you kind of consider at second base, pop like that doesn't just grow on trees. And he also walked 4 times this week as well, right? Like the walks have been a big thing for Miggy. He's spoken many times about how that's something he wants to, improve on. He also did strike out 5 times this week, right? That's 1 strikeout per game. And, it was kind of, like I said, it was kind of that like essence of Miggy Romero, where you see the things that you saw this week, the things he did good, but you also saw the things that like like that sometimes hold him back, right? Like I said, he only had 3 hits this week. He did strike out 5 times, but then again, 2 homers, 4 walks. Well, like overall, comes out to a solid week with those 2 big homers being the big highlights.
Yep.
Which are nice to see, but it does kind of speak a little bit to where Mikey is, because he can have weeks where he goes crazy, right? And he hits the ball really hard, and when he's on, he hits the ball really hard. And it's a see, we start earlier in the year where, in all honesty, he was really unlucky where he would hit the ball hard right at people. But then we also have seen the times this season where he's had his struggles, and he will sometimes put up a 10 strikeout week, right? And this week was a little bit of both, right? He had his struggles, he had his really big moments, and it is in AAA, right? It's you're right on the doorstep of the big leagues. It is not a good. Anyone in AAA is 20 times better, even way more than 20 times better than a baseball player than Hunter and I could be, right? So we're not like
5,000 times the player.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean. They're way 50 million times better than we could ever be, right? But the point is though, like, so yeah, we're not trying to crap on anyone. But like, yeah, there are some flaws with Mikey. There's flaws with everyone's game, right? Hell, Mike Trout has flaws in his game. Even when he was winning MVPs, I remember on MLB Network them being like, he can't hit a high fastball. He struggles to hit high fastballs compared to other pitches, right? Everyone has flaws, right?
But like you said, he had the 2 homers this week. He had the 4 walks. He's up to 23 walks this year, which is almost his career high is 34. He's got 11 doubles on the year, 2 triples, 6 homers. His career high in homers is 17. And like he's hitting the ball hard all year. That's something I talked about with Johnny Reyna is the process is there. He's been hitting the ball hard. It's just the results will come, and they're starting to show up. Like he's hitting 292. He's in the month of June, he's slashing 292, 365, 492. He's got 2 doubles, a triple, 3 homers. He's got 8 RBIs. He's got 8 walks. Like it was a really, really cool month of May. He hit just 179 in the month of May, and we are getting just a phenomenal June. And to me, it's no surprise that it's getting hot out, and we're starting to see a really good Mikey Romero. And Marcelo Meyer got hurt, and there might be a long-term opening in Boston. Obviously, Mikey Romero is really not playing shortstop anymore, but still, the Red Sox, they might need someone in a long-term role.
Also, too, there's a current aging shortstop who's also currently injured, who
Yes.
is going to need to be replaced in the lineup at some point, at some time, long term.
And Zhang Che Chang, I don't think they'll see him as like a long-term solution. I think he's kind of just a stopgap guy. So if Mikey can get hot for a couple weeks, maybe he can play himself into a position of at least getting talked about for earning an audition in Boston, which would be very cool. But yeah, he's starting to show some of that power. I talked about it before, and I'll talk about it again because he showcased it this week. Don't be surprised if we're, starting to talk about it almost weekly, of where we're talking about like, hey, Mikey Romero hit 2 more home runs this week. Hey, Mikey Romero had 3 doubles and a homer this week, because he consistently hits the piss out of the ball. Even when he first got drafted and he was not much of a power hitter, something Mikey Romero always had was one of the prettiest swings. And that was always something that it was going to create a lot of good contact. And he's added muscle and he's added power to his game. So that has certainly added a lot of intrigue into his game. So that's the power has come.
Yeah, I think too. Like I said, when I say with Mikey, like like, yeah, he has his flaws. Everyone has his flaws. Nobody's going to be the perfect player, right? And I think that's a good thing. And Mikey knows who he is, right? Like, he's come on this show, the Pesky Report, has come on to our show, sat with us, and has literally said, yeah, I need to, get better at drawing more walks. I need to limit the strikeouts, right? And the self-awareness is a really good thing, right? And it's important to have too, right? Because some guys who maybe might have a big ego or whatever, and when I say some guys, I'm not saying, like, I'm not thinking of anyone in particular, I'm just saying in general, right? Some guys have a big ego. They might say they might be striking out 30% of the time, but they don't think it's an issue because, I'm Joe Schmo from wherever and on whatever team, and I hit dingers and, and whatnot. And like, chicks dig the long ball, and it's like, okay, cool, but like, you're never making it to the big leagues doing that if you're striking out 35% of the time and at X level of the minor leagues, right? Like, and so, and that, like, it's really good that Mikey also has that self-awareness as well. He knows what he's working on and needs to work on, and we've seen him make strides at some of those things that he's been public about working on, so it's not just a public, like, hey, I need to work on this. He's actually putting in the work too, right? Which, it does speak to kind of also to who he is, right? Because it's not just oh, I need to work on this, but then I'm going to go work on something else. No, it's I need to work on this and I'm going to go work on it and to get better. And we've seen it as he's progressed through the levels. We've seen him get better, right? And we've seen him face higher levels of competition and get better, right? And so, and also too, how cool would a Mikey Romero and Marcelo Meyer middle infield be? Just think of like it was funny. I was thinking about how one day you get the Franklin Primera story on an ESPN game about how he was unsigned until he was 17 years old and only signed for $10K. Wait for the damn ESPN story on Mikey Romero and Marcelo Meyer on an ESPN game if that were to ever happen with them in the middle infield together, right? Like, two kids growing up in California, knew each other, played against each other, but now they're up the middle infield for the Red Sox at the big league level. Like, just imagine Buster Olney once again coming in with this story about the two. Like I said, would be a cool thing to see, right? As well, one day. And it was also kind of funny because when they drafted Mikey, it was one of the things that everyone was like, "Oh, these guys grew up; they're going to be our middle infield duo," right? So it'd be a cool thing. The other thing I do want to mention, just on kind of the Worcester front, and we've been. It's funny because now Mickey Gasper's now in Worcester, so it is a interesting development, I guess you could say, considering now Worcester's going to have 4 full-time catchers. But they brought in Andrew Kisner, and when I say it's interesting because now with Gasper, with the idea of Gasper being on the big league team, it made sense, right? Worcester had been running with essentially 2 catchers, Delay and Tice splitting the time, and even Nathan Hickey was having to catch, right? Having to catch a game here and there, right? And Kisner, funnily enough, 3 for 11 this week, a pair of doubles, had the highest OPS out of everyone in Worcester this week, funnily enough. It is interesting because they bring him in. Now Gasper gets sent down to Worcester, although with the state of Worcester, Gasper might be playing a lot of first base in all honesty with the state of Worcester right now, and hell, maybe even some second base. But it is interesting because now Worcester is going to have 4 full-time catchers, plus obviously Montero on the dev list. And like I said, even Nathan Hickey, because I know he's not really a catcher anymore, but he has now caught a game this year. Now has caught in a game this year. So, going to be interesting to see how that playing time all gets sorted out between the catchers. Obviously, they're all vets. None of them are prospects. But that is an interesting thing because of how that's going to be played out. But also, too, I think the other thing, too, with Kisner, too, like that's also got another catcher you can trust behind the plate. Speaks to, the catching situation in Worcester in terms of what they're now looking for in catchers, because we've seen catchers of the past that haven't been as trusted behind the plate, and how that spanned out. And if you're unaware, not very well. So I thought that was an interesting thing, considering now that Gasper has now gotten sent down. Has gone sent down to Worcester. I think how that plays out will be interesting. Anything else, Hunter, on the position player side of things?
Nope.
All right, on the pitching side of things, Hunter, I'll hand it off to you. Where do you want to go here?
Kind of nowhere. The pitching is ugly, if we're being honest. And we're at the 3-hour mark, and my laptop is struggling. If we're being honest.
Well, I will go. I will just.
I don't know if you saw my messages. I was telling you. I said my laptop's dying on me here.
Yeah, no, I got you. No, I got you. We got Bayo with the 5 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 6 strikeouts, just the 2 walks. I know it's at the AAA level. Nice to see though. Like it's nice to see. And I think the bigger thing was how Iggy Suarez kind of mentioned him. It seemed like mentality wise. So hopefully things are going back. Hopefully this is being a good reset for Bayo when you kind of look in the context of the big league team. And you do have to remember with Bayo too, like he's had his time in the big leagues. He's 27 years old, but like he's at 27 years old, he's been through a lot, in all honesty, when you kind of consider, how his big league career started, and he was kind of just thrusted in immediately. Like, we need a guy, we're going to Bayo. And then he gets the 3 full seasons in the rotation. And last year he was really good. This year, obviously, not so much. But it is, at 27 years old, Bayo has pitched in a sense almost 3.5 years in the big leagues. And if you include then the half year of this year, almost 4 years in the big leagues, right? At just even and all that at 27 years old. So he's like a vet, but also too, like in some ways he's not, he's not a 30-something-year-old either. And even at 27, there's, it's not, him getting this reset, it might do wonders for him. Right? So, look good. 1 run over 5 innings, 6 strikeouts, just 2 walks. Solid. The 5 hits, okay, maybe like to lower that a little bit, but, it seems like the reset, especially mentally, the reset seemingly is doing good for him. Seemingly. There's not really much else. Juan Montero pitched. I know he gave it 2 runs, but like I guess I like there isn't really anything else. We talked about it before with Worcester. There's not a ton of prospects, and even then, like especially on the pitching side of things too, with how thin they're kind of getting, in terms of like starters, especially where it's like rehab guys and then needing bullpen guys to kind of be bulk guys. There isn't really a ton there. So yeah. Anything else of note, Hunter, before we wrap it up? Next week, draft preview. July 6th, it will be recorded. That will be ready for your ears to listen to on July 7th. Other than that, we're wrapping it up. For Hunter, as always, my name is Derek. Thanks for tuning into the Pesky Report, and we will see you next time.
Like, this is called the Pesky Report. Like,